Chapter 138. The Shi families passed fortunately. When she entered, Madame Zhou had just started cooking. Chen Liang was a little surprised to see her. "Why are you here at this time? Are you looking for me?" "I want to ask Uncle Chen about something." Chen Liang walked to the central room and sat down. He pointed at the chair opposite him. "Ask away." "It's about Shi Dashan's family. One met them selling oranges in the city today. They looked big and sweet. Auntie Dong said that the couple is very good at planting fruit trees. One won't hide it from Uncle Chen. I want to plant some fruit trees, but I don't know much about this." Chen Liang was a little surprised. "You want to plant fruit trees?" "Yes." In any case, the village chief would know if she bought land later. Chen Liang lowered his eyes and thought for a moment before saying, "The older people in the village know what's going on with the Shi family. It's fine to tell you. Don't think that Zhuangzi is so unreasonable, but his parents are good. If you want to ask them for help, look for them. They're reliable." Gu Yundong was surprised. From the sound of it, there seemed to be more to it. Everyone in the village says that Shi Dashan and his wife are timid and weak. They will only lower their heads and admit their mistakes when they are bullied. Actually they were not like this in the past. When the two of them first got married, they were energetic every day. In the beginning, they even bought a piece of land and planted fruit trees. Not to mention, they planted fruit trees better than the villagers. Not only were there oranges, but there were also pears, dates, persimmons. When those fruits ripen, they looked really good hanging on trees. "What a pity." Chen Liang shook his head. At that time, there was a landlord in the neighboring village who took a fancy to that fruit forest and insisted on buying it. He even offered a low price. How could this person be willing to sell the fruits that he had painstakingly planted? Gu Yundong was puzzled. The landlord of the neighboring village had such a long reach? At that time, I wasn't the village chief yet. The person before me was a greedy person. He took some benefits from the landlord and helped the landlord force the Shi family to give up the fruit forest. Shi Dashan was still a little hot-tempered at that time. He argued with the landlord and chased the servants of the landlord out. After a while, the commotion became bigger and bigger. In the end, Shi Dashan's parents died. Gu Yundong's eyes widened. "You mean?" Chen Liang sighed and nodded. "The landlord got someone to do it. The entire Shi family was beaten up. Shi Dashan and Liu Yi were young. They would be fine after resting for a while. His parents were old. They fell sick every other day because of the previous incident. After suffering again, they didn't make it. His parents had both passed away, and the fruit forest had not been saved. His family was in a mess, and Shi Dashan had collapsed. His vitality seemed to have been forcefully sucked away just like that. At that time, Zhuangzi had just been born. Before his parents died, they reminded him not to resist. Their family had no background or backing, and those relatives did not dare to help them offend the landlord and village chief. For this family and for the newborn Zhuangzi, they should tolerate it if they could. They would retreat if they could and try not to become enemies with others. Since then, Shi Dashan and his wife's temperament had changed drastically. They did not argue with the landlord again. From then on, they did not walk around outside much and mostly stayed at home. As for Zhuangzi, he became more and more rebellious because he was dissatisfied with his parents. Especially after he discovered that after hanging out with Hu Liang, those people who bullied his family did not dare to cause trouble again. It was as if he had found a way to survive and became even more uncontrollable. Gu Yundong could not help but sigh. It was no wonder that his parents had passed away. What about the landlord? Chapter 139. Confrontation. When Gu Yundong came out of the village chief's house, the sky was already slightly dark. She was not in a hurry. She walked slowly along the village path. She had been in Yongfu village for so long, but she had never felt the peace of Yongfu village at such a time. The sound of children crying could be heard from this house, and the sound of husband and wife quarreling could be heard from that house. It was lively, as if all kinds of life flashed past her eyes. She should be glad that she came to Yongfu village at the right time and met Chen Liang as the village chief. The former village chief was said to have drunken alcohol one night and had not found his home after leaving. He had frozen to death outside on a snowy day. Everyone said that he had done too many bad things and received retribution. The landlord didn't have a good ending either. A few years ago, Fengkai County had the current county magistrate. The landlord did something evil and bumped into the county magistrate. His house was confiscated, and the landlord was beheaded. His family was exiled. Unfortunately, the Xian'er couple's temperament had already been set. Even if the two mountains that suppressed them were gone, they would not be able to turn around. However, Yundong was right. This did not stop her from asking them for help. Yundong's mood improved. She could not help but smile when she walked into the Zhang residence. Until she saw the children confronting each other in the courtyard. On the left were Yunshu, Dan, the three Zhang siblings, and Madame Yang. On the right was Yunka. But why did Yundong feel that Yunka, who was alone, was more imposing? The children did not see Yundong enter. They were all holding lollipops, while Yunka had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, a whole bunch of them. In terms of the number of lollipops, she was more imposing than the few people opposite her combined. Kiki, you're being too unfair. We each have one, and you have so many, Yunshu said angrily. Yunka immediately put her hands behind her back and hid the lollipop in her hand. However, in this way, a few candies fell out of the front pocket of her clothes. The little girl was stunned and hurriedly stuffed the lollipops into her pocket. The corners of Yundong's mouth twitched. She had asked Madame Yang to sew this pocket for her. Occasionally, this girl would take some peanuts and chestnuts and put them in the pocket to eat slowly. The lollipop was wrapped in oil paper, so it would not stick to the pocket. After stuffing the lollipop into the front pocket, the little girl realized that the lollipops in the two sides of her pants had fallen out again. She was so anxious that she was sweating profusely. In the end, she simply pulled off the hat on her head, put the lollipop inside, closed it, and hid it behind her back. Then she raised her head. Her hair was bouncing because she had lost her hat. Look, I didn't. Yunshu was furious. It's in your hat. Hiding the candy in front of everyone. Did she think they were all blind? The little girl shook her head vigorously. One said no, so I didn't. Kiki, give each of us another one. You can have the rest, okay? Dan coaxed her. He had licked the lollipop just now. It was simply too delicious. He felt like he was about to ascend to heaven. It was much, much better than sweets. He couldn't bear to eat another bite. Yundong shook his head. He walked behind Yunka and took the hat from her hand. The little girl was stunned and hurriedly turned around. When she saw that it was her eldest sister, she immediately pouted and looked at her pitifully. One didn't. That aggrieved expression, as if tears were about to fall the next moment. Chapter 140. Nice, delicious. Not greasy. Yundong could not take it anymore. She quickly took one out of her hat and gave it to her. You can't eat too much sugar, or your teeth will rot. In the future, you won't be able to eat braised pork, rabbit meat, or chicken. The little girl swallowed her saliva and looked at the lollipop eagerly. Then one, then I. She couldn't finish the rest of the sentence. Yundong smiled. How about this? I'll keep the candy for now. I'll give you one a day, okay? As she spoke, she looked at the other children. You too. You can't eat too much sugar. In the future, take one every day to develop a habit. Otherwise, if I make all kinds of sugar in the future, you won't be able to keep your teeth. Yunshu's eyes lit up. Eldest sister wants to make all kinds of sugar? Dan and the others' focus was on another thing. Can we eat candy every day? This was a very extravagant thing. Sugar was very precious. Dan family rarely bought it. Even if they did, they could only eat it during the New Year and festival. It was usually hidden well. Yundong nodded. I just made this candy. Try it and see if it tastes good. I'll try another type of candy tomorrow. Only then did the children start to carefully eat the beautiful and cute lollipop in front of them. Yundong had made several molds before. They were all simple ones. Some were square, some were round, some were heart-shaped, and some were pentagrams. There were almost all of them, and they looked very likable. In fact, if she really started, she could even make models of various small animals. Yes, it's delicious. It's sweet and fragrant. It tastes like pears. Yunshu was the first to speak. His eyes were shining. Dan also nodded vigorously. Previously, He had licked it for the first time and didn't think about it carefully. This time, after eating it, he was so excited that his body was trembling. Sister Yundong, did you really make this? It's even better than what I used to eat. This isn't greasy at all, and it doesn't stick to my teeth. Zhang Yu also said, Sister Yundong, if we sell this, it will definitely be sold out in an instant. This was what Gu Yundong wanted. Do you all think so? It's good-looking, delicious, and not greasy. Zhang Jia was the oldest among the children. Zhang Hu, who had always been taken care of next door, was also quiet. It was rare for him to express his opinion. As for the two youngest and oldest, Zhang Lu, Gu Yunka, and Madame Yang, they could not be bothered to speak. They ate happily. Gu Yundong was in a good mood. She took out a few more lollipops and handed them to Gu Yunshu. Take them to the next room for your Uncle Zhang and brother Shao. Go. Then, she gave one to Madame Dong and ate the other. Gu Yunka looked on helplessly as she ate. Her gaze was extremely pitiful. Gu Yundong was amused by her. Don't worry. There will definitely be one a day. If you perform well, eldest sister will reward you with one more. With that, she went into the kitchen. Because the sweet she made had received the unanimous approval of Shao Qingyuan and the others, Gu Yundong became confident about what she had to do next. At night, she lay in bed and thought about her future development. When she earned money, it would be much simpler to look for Gu Dajiang or treat Madame Yang. The next morning, Gu Yundong put on the carriage and went out. Unexpectedly, when she left the courtyard, she saw that Shao Qingyuan was already waiting there. Young Master Liu hasn't given me the money. 111 go to the county city too. This is a big deal. Come up then. The two of them went to the Liu residence together. Unexpectedly, when they reached the entrance, Liu Wei was already waiting outside. Chapter 141. 20 Catties. First, Liu Wei had a gloating smile on his face. Gu Yundong's heart skipped a beat and she had a bad feeling. Sure enough, as soon as she stepped forward, she heard his sly voice. One have bad news for you. Do you want to hear it? Gu Yundong clenched her fists. Could she go up and beat him up? Before she could answer, Liu Wei couldn't help but say, half an hour ago, a servant from the Qin family came over and said that Brother Qin and his wife had gone out and would only be back in a few days. He left my brother some homework and asked him to finish it at home. So your plan to go to school is ruined. Liu Wei felt that his grievances from yesterday were finally swept away. Gu Yundong could not hold it in any longer. She stepped on his foot and turned to leave. Ouch! Liu Wei cried so loudly that even Luan couldn't bear to look at him. Young master, you're the eldest young master of the Liu family. Can you take note of your status? How can you feel so accomplished bullying a 13-year-old girl? Before Liu Wei could stop shouting, Shao Qingyuan was already standing in front of him. Give me the silver. Liu Wei almost spat out a mouthful of blood. This was his sworn brother who would live and die with him. This was simply heartless and unreasonable. He asked Luan to give him the banknotes. Then, he snorted and decided to cut ties with him. Unexpectedly, Shao Qingyuan took the banknotes and followed Gu Yundong. Liu Wei. Gu Yundong walked for a long distance before slowing down. Shao Qingyuan's legs were long, so it didn't take long for him to catch up. Seeing that she didn't seem to be in a good mood, he opened his mouth and said after a while, Actually, there are other schools in the county city. You can look at other schools. Gu Yundong sighed. I already know the best one. Why would one be willing to settle for something else? Not to mention anything else, just from the fact that the Liu family spared no effort to send the child over, it could be seen that this was a rare teacher. To be able to become the top scholar at the age of 18, he must be at least more knowledgeable than the other teachers in the county. When the court was in turmoil, his courage to retreat meant that he was not pedantic but flexible. He remembered the Liu family's favor, which showed that he was grateful. If he did not look at their family background to take in students, it was obvious that he would not be greedy, lecherous, and trample on others. In addition, he was young and knew how to scheme against Liu Wei. Gu Yundong was very satisfied. Forget it. He'll come back eventually. Anyway, Yunshu is still young. There's no hurry. Gu Yundong decided to come back after Qin Wenzheng returned to the county. By the way, do you know where the largest grocery store in the county is? I want to buy some sugar. She wanted to try orange-flavored candy. I'll take you there. The largest grocery store in the county was also on East Street. It was not far away. When Yundong entered, the grocery store was quite lively. The waiter greeted the other customers. Yundong looked around and frowned slightly. Seeing that she didn't buy anything after walking around and even looked a little unhappy, the shopkeeper walked over and asked, "Miss, what do you want to buy? Our shop is the largest grocery store in Fengkai County. You can buy anything you want." "I want to buy white sugar." She looked around but couldn't find it. The shopkeeper was stunned. He looked at her from head to toe. Judging from her clothes, she was also from the countryside. How could she afford white sugar? "Miss, this white sugar is not cheap. How much do you want?" "Let's start with 20 catties." The shopkeeper glared at her. Even the waiter and customers beside her turned their heads in surprise when they heard this. "How much do you want?" Chapter 142. Can you afford it? 20 catties, Yundong repeated. She didn't know what they were trying to do with their expressions. The shopkeeper frowned. "Miss, you're here to cause trouble, right? 20 catties? Do you know how much it costs?" "How much?" "1 tael of white sugar for 25 copper coins." The shopkeeper sneered. "Can you afford it? You asked for 20 catties so easily." Yundong knew that white sugar and brown sugar were quite expensive. She had bought sweets on the streets for the two children as snacks. The sweets were slightly cheaper. Previously, in the prefectural city of Xian'er Prefecture, she had forgotten to buy white sugar when she went to the grocery store to buy oil, salt, rice, and noodles. It was only when she returned to Aunt K's house to take out some things that she remembered. At that time, she wanted to buy it. Aunt K said that sugar was expensive and she wouldn't need much anyway. They had it at home, so she could use it at home. Yundong did not refuse. However, the white sugar Aunt K took out was not pure white sugar. It was just brighter than black sugar. However, she only used it as seasoning when cooking braised pork. She rarely used it for other purposes. Later on, when she came to Yongfu village, she never thought of buying candy. Mainly because it was inconvenient. She had forgotten about it a few times when she went to the county city in town. Therefore, when she needed candy, she could only take it from her space when Madame Dong was not paying attention. Fortunately, Madame Dong did not know what she had brought with her when she came from the prefectural city. She was not as sharp as Aunt Ku. She had specially come over to buy it today. She did not expect it to be so difficult to buy 20 catties of white sugar. And it was so expensive. But hearing the shopkeeper's words, Yundong was unhappy. "Why do you care if I can afford it? Do you have it in your provision store? If not, I'll buy it elsewhere." The shopkeeper snorted and asked the waiter to go to the warehouse at the back to get it. He walked to the counter and began to calculate. 1 tael for 25 copper coins. 20 catties costs 8 taels of silver. "Miss, have you brought enough silver?" "Yes." Yundong did not want to say anything more, but the other customers in the shop watched her and started discussing quietly. This girl is quite bold. She actually wants to buy 20 catties of white sugar. She's really generous. Don't tell me she's pretending. Look at the clothes she's wearing. One look and you can tell that she's from the countryside. It's good enough that she has 8 copper coins on her. 8 taels of silver. Let's see what you say later. Hence, the few people who had bought the goods stopped walking and looked at Yundong. Shao Qingyuan stood at the door and did not go in. He did not know what was going on inside. He only saw that Yundong had not come out in a long time. She looked inside. Seeing that she was fine, he turned back. The waiter quickly brought out a large bag of sugar and placed it in front of Yundong. He said arrogantly, "Here, it's all here. Do you want me to weigh it for you?" Yundong opened the bag and looked down. Her expression immediately became complicated. This was also considered white sugar? "Shopkeeper, one want that kind of very white sugar. It's like white clouds. Isn't this too black?" The shopkeeper suddenly walked out from behind the counter, closed the bag, and put it behind him. "What nonsense are you talking about? And very white sugar. Let me tell you, this is the best we have. Are you buying it or not? If not, get lost." He was about to spit out saliva. You're here to cause trouble because our shop's business is good, right? I knew it. You look poor and keep saying that you want to buy 20 caddies of white sugar. You've never seen the world, so you're spouting nonsense here. If you have the ability, find me white sugar like white clouds. If you find it, I'll buy it back at 10 times the price. With that, he pushed Gu Yundong. Shao Qingyuan rushed forward and grabbed his hand. He looked at him coldly. Gu Yundong was also annoyed. You're the one who hasn't seen the world. I'll make some for you to see. Don't forget what you said when the time comes. As soon as Liu Yi arrived, he heard her last sentence. Chapter 143. Make it yourself. Plant it yourself. The shopkeeper was a little afraid of being beaten up by Shao Qingyuan. He did not dare to look him in the eye and could only say to Gu Yundong, "All right, go and try making some. You stinky girl who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth." Ah! When Shao Qingyuan exerted force, the shopkeeper immediately did not dare to speak. Liu Yi knew that this provision store belonged to the Tao family in the county city. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan would be at a disadvantage if this matter blew up. He quickly took 2 steps forward and glared at the shopkeeper. "You snob. Let's go. We won't buy it here." With that, he pulled Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan out of the provision store. As soon as they left, the others in the shop suddenly woke up. After a moment of silence, they burst into laughter in the next moment. That little girl really dares to brag. Is there something wrong with her brain? I think she's talking nonsense. If she had that ability, would she still be dressed like that? She definitely can't take out 8 taels of silver and is deliberately looking for a way out. That was young Master Liu just now, right? Young Master Liu is getting more and more unreasonable. What kind of friends does he have? Forget about that girl. The man beside her also looks fierce. The shop assistant beside him rolled his eyes and whispered into the shopkeeper's ear, "Didn't our young master lose to young Master Liu in polo last time and throw a big tantrum at home? Can we use this matter to vent our anger this time?" The shopkeeper's eyes lit up. "Kid, you're the smartest. Take good care of the shop. I'll go out for a while." Gu Yundong and the other 2 gradually walked away, but the conversation still drifted into their ears. Liu Yi frowned. "Gu girl, you'll be struck by lightning if you talk big." "Who's talking big?" Gu Yundong glared at him. Liu Yi sneered. "One heard you say that you can make sugar that's even whiter than that in the grocery store. If you don't believe me, let's make a bet." Gu Yundong stopped in her tracks. "If I succeed, you have to do something for me." "All right." Liu Yi agreed readily. In any case, he didn't believe her. He was just coaxing the little girl to play. Gu Yundong turned to look at Shao Qingyuan, who instantly reacted. "I'll testify." "Then let's go home and get ready." Gu Yundong suddenly became energetic. All right, if there was no sugar, she would make it herself. If there were no fruits, she would grow them herself. When Gu Yundong returned to Yongfu village, she asked Dong Xiulan who planted sugarcane. Coincidentally, the Shi family had it. However, it wasn't a lot. When Shao Qingyuan heard this, he bought a large batch from other places. Gu Yundong was surprised, but she was very happy. She went to look for Shi Dashan. The couple happened to be working in the field. Gu Yundong took the opportunity to look at her fruit forest. It was really as the village chief had said. It looked pleasing. When the Shi couple saw Gu Yundong suddenly come over, they panicked, especially when they saw that her gaze was fixed on their fruit forest with satisfaction in her eyes. They were so flustered that they almost hit their feet with their hoe. Could it be that after Landlord Li died, another Landlord Gu came? Was it fate that they were not suitable for planting fruit trees? They had waited for Landlord Li to die before planting such a small piece. Gu Yundong had already jumped off the ridge. She smiled and tried her best to look at the Shi couple lovingly. However, Shi Dashan and his wife looked at her expression as if they had seen a ghost. They resisted the urge to turn around and run. Chapter 144. House-constructed Gu Yundong could not understand their attitude, but she still tried her best to be friendly and tell them about his plan to buy his sugarcane. When the Shi couple heard this, they secretly heaved a sigh of relief and asked her how much she wanted. Gu Yundong had already seen the quantity of sugarcane in their house. It was not much. Therefore, sell them all to me if you can. The Sure couple was surprised, but it was naturally good that they could sell all the sugarcane. This was much easier than them painstakingly dragging the sugarcane to town or county to sell. Gu Yundong still paid the market price. After paying, the Sure couple quickly harvested all the sugarcane and sent it to her. Looking at the courtyard filled with sugarcane, Madame Dong was a little stunned. When Gu Yundong said that she wanted to make sugar, she was even more shocked. However, she could not say anything. While she was surprised, she still diligently helped her. Gu Yundong knew how to refine sugar. During her internship in university, she had competed for the position of a television host's assistant with her ability. The host was in charge of the program to search for some heritage skills that were about to disappear. Gu Yundong worked hard by her side. The host found it tiring and Gu Yundong had helped her with her homework. Among them was the method of making sugar. She had personally made it with the craftsman and would ask questions if she didn't understand. Unfortunately, she had only tried it twice at most and wasn't considered familiar with it. Back then, she would record these steps in her notebook. Unfortunately, after the apocalypse, she did not have the time to bring that notebook out. However, she still remembered the general method. The problem now was to experiment. She had to get familiar with the process and perfect it bit by bit. She knew that people nowadays would add a kind of tree ash to refine the white sugar in the process of making sugar, but the kind given by the shopkeeper was definitely not refined like this. Perhaps the white sugar refined after adding tree ash could only be seen in those rich families. Gu Yundong had learned the yellow water method of making sugar. She knew that this was a method that appeared during the Ming dynasty. This world was different from the history she had learned before. This should not be considered changing history. This method was to simmer the sugarcane after squeezing the juice. First, they would make black sugar according to the conventional method. Then, they would put the black sugar into a tile funnel to form a lump. Then, they would pour the yellow mud water into the funnel to produce a reaction. Then they would obtain white sugar. Gu Yundong brought everything she needed to the Zhang family's backyard. Madame Dong knew that these skills could not be taught to outsiders, so she was very self-aware. After doing what she could, she usually did not go to the backyard. Gu Yundong experimented, perfected, processed, and picked up the steps bit by bit. Her family didn't bother her. They even kept quiet and tried not to disturb her. Shao Qingyuan had been here a few times, and he had always helped her do the work that required hard work. Liu Yi had also been here. He seemed to have something urgent to discuss with Gu Yundong. But just as he reached the door, he was stopped by Shao Qingyuan. Gu Yundong vaguely heard him mention the word, young Master Tao. However, she was very busy and quickly focused on her own matters. After more than 10 days, when Gu Yundong was still busy in the backyard, she was finally pulled out by Madame Dong. Her house was already built. The beam would be installed the day after tomorrow. Chapter 145. Gu Yundong, why are you here? Gu Yundong was still in a daze. The beam would be installed? She had not been to her house for the past few days. She did not know what was going on. She quickly put down the work in her hands, packed up, changed her clothes, and walked towards the homestead. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up as she looked at the refreshing green brick house in front of him. Finally, she had her own house. Feng Danning was also very excited. This was the most proud house he had built. He followed Gu Yundong inside. As he looked, he said, "The beam will be up the day after tomorrow. This furniture might take another 2 days to be pulled over. This is the cellar you wanted. The well in the backyard has been dug. This house is really good." Feng Danning sighed. Gu Yundong looked around and was very satisfied. She would tell Madame Dong about the treat later. The beam installation here required a party. However, there were not many people in the village that the Gu family were familiar with. It was impossible for her to treat the entire village to a banquet. After some rough calculations, she realized that Shao Qingyuan, the Zhang family, the village chief's family, the Feng family, and the 6th great-grandfather were on good terms with her. There were also the workers who helped build the house. There were also 2 or 3 tables with their families. Yes, there was also the Sure family. Liu Yi would also be invited. Oh yes, there were also Gu Yunshu and Gu Yang's playmates. These two little fellows actually had friends, although there were only 2 or 3 of them. After drawing up the name list, Yundong began to prepare. There were many things that she did not know. It was Madame Dong who told her what to buy and how to prepare steamed buns and peanuts. Madame Zhou and her daughter-in-law, Madame Song, also came over. Feng Daning's wife also said that she would help cook on the day of celebration. Yundong was very grateful to them and was generous. On the day when the sun rose, Yundong was woken up by Madame Dong. She brought Madame Yang and the other 2 to the entrance of her house, and saw more than half of the villagers gathered there. Madame Zhou came over to call her. Yundong, quick! Firecrackers are going off. Yundong asked Yunshu to light the firecrackers. The moment the firecrackers sounded, Feng Daning and the others also shouted, "The beam is up!" Yundong threw out all the peanuts, cinnamon, and round steamed buns in her hand, mixed with copper coins. All the men, women, old, and young present pounced over excitedly to snatch it. Those who managed to snatch the copper coins were screaming and shouting. Yunshu and Yunka were completely awake and were playing with each other. After the beam was up and the crowd dispersed, it was time to prepare the food. Madame Dong, Madame Zhou, and the others began to cut the vegetables and meat. They looked at the vegetables that Yundong had bought and smiled. Later on, guests arrived one after another. There were also uninvited guests from the village. As long as they were not here to cause trouble, Yundong would let them in, including Madame Fong and her daughter. Liu Wei was in the county city, but he came especially early, as if he was here for breakfast. However, there was also an unexpected family. The Pang family. Peng Zhongfei didn't come. He didn't dare to come. However, he also paid attention to the day when the Gu family's house was completed. That day, he got someone to send a gift over. Because the person in charge of the Gu family was a girl, he asked for the help of his wife's nanny to send it over. That nanny was quite arrogant. She even brought 2 servant girls with her. Since they were guests, Yundong naturally invited them in. Besides, she was very willing to accept gifts. Unexpectedly, just as the 3 of them entered, one of the servant girls behind the nanny suddenly widened her eyes and shouted, "Yundong! Why is it you?" Chapter 146. Xian'er's request. The voice was almost shrill. Everyone present heard it and looked at the girl who spoke in surprise. Yundong also looked at her. It took her a while to find out this person's identity from her memories. Oh, it was Xian'er. Second Uncle Da's daughter, the cousin who specialized in bullying them. Back then, Dajiang got married relatively late, so Yundong was only 4 months older than her cousin. Yundong was very dissatisfied with this king life. She wanted to meet Dajiang, but she couldn't. Now, she actually met this person who she didn't even want to look at. The mammy of the Peng family also looked at Xian'er in surprise. The latter had already taken a few steps forward and grabbed Yundong's hand. "Why are you here? You're not dead?" "Pfft, you're the one who should be dead." She was the one who wanted to ask why Xian'er was here. Enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. "This is my home. If I'm not here, where am one?" Xian'er was stunned. Her home? That's right. Previously, Granny Chen had said that the owner of the house that they had come to give gifts was surnamed Gu. At that time, she had thought that they really had the same surname but different lives. Especially when she saw this green brick-tiled house at the door, she wished that she was the owner surnamed Gu. Unexpectedly, this person was Yundong. How was this possible? Yundong looked around and realized that everyone was looking at them. She did not want to become a topic of discussion, especially today, which was a good day for her house to be completed. It was too unlucky to be destroyed by an unknown person. Hence, she glanced at Xian'er and said, "Follow me." Xian'er was full of questions, so she quickly followed her. Madame Zhou was also in the hall. Although she did not know what had happened, she was the village chief's wife after all. She quickly went forward to greet Nanny Chen and the others. "Everyone, take a seat. Let's eat some melon seeds and talk. There's brown sugar water here. It's very sweet. Don't be polite. Everyone, take a seat." Brown sugar water? This was good stuff. The Gu family was actually treating guests with this. Wasn't this too generous? Of course, These brown sugars were the products of Gu Yundong's experiments before she refined white sugar. Everyone's attention was immediately attracted by the brown sugar water. Only a few people looked at Gu Yundong. Gu Yundong brought her to a room inside. Along the way, Gu Xian'er took in the scenery of the Gu family. Although the house had not been completely decorated, just by looking at the prototype that had been built, it was enough to imagine how blissful it would be to stay in such a home. At least, it was much better than the old Gu family in the past. Gu Xian'er was overjoyed. She did not expect Gu Yundong to be so lucky. Not only did she survive the famine, but she also built such a huge house. Gu Xian'er was glad that she had followed Granny Qian here today. After closing the door of the room, Gu Yundong saw that she was still looking left and right, her eyes shining. She did not need to think to know what this woman was thinking. Why are you here? How did you become a servant of the Peng family? Gu Xian'er finally came back to her senses. When she heard the word servant, she was a little unhappy. It's all because of those two old farts. They were instigated by third uncle's family and actually sold me to a human broker with a bag of sweet potatoes. I was brought to Fengkai County by the human broker. Then, as if she had thought of something, her eyes suddenly lit up and she said, "You must have a lot of money to build such a good house. Hurry up and go to the Peng residence to redeem me." Chapter 147. Bullying the weak and fearing the hard, huh? Gu Yundong almost laughed out loud at her words. Redeem her? It would be good enough if she did not force her to be a servant girl in the Peng residence. Redeem her? However, Gu Xian'er did not see her expression. She looked up at the room that was twice as big as the one she used to have in the Gu family and said excitedly, "This room is not bad. Let me stay in it in the future. When the time comes, I want a big carved bed and a dressing table. There have to be a few cabinets over there. Oh right, there are also vases. Rich families have to put vases in their rooms. That's how the Peng family is." She had already planned to get Gu Yundong to buy her a few silk flowers and cut a few pieces of cloth with a better color to make clothes. Living in such a house and wearing new clothes, wasn't she like a young lady? Gu Xian'er. Gu Yundong interrupted her thoughts and asked with a sneer, "How long have you been a servant in the Peng manor?" "Why are you asking this?" "It's been less than 2 months, she replied impatiently. Less than 2 months. It seemed that she came to Yongfu village a little earlier. Gu Yundong nodded. That's not a short period of time. Why? Have you not learned how to bend your knees after being a servant for nearly 2 months? Gu Xian'er was stunned. What do you mean? Where did a servant get the confidence to order people around in my house? Gu Yundong, how dare you talk to me like that? In the past, Gu Yundong did not dare to refute her at all. Even if she was scolded or beaten by her, she would only cry and hide. Now she was so bold. Why wouldn't I dare? This is my house. Are you out of your mind to stand on my territory and order me around? Gu Yundong looked at her as if she was looking at a fool. You're the problem. You're really bold. Aren't you afraid that I... What's there to be afraid of? Are you afraid that you'll complain? Go, go, go. Go find the grandpa and grandma who sold you. Go find your lazy parents. Gu Yundong began to roll up her sleeves. Or are you afraid that I'll hit you? Come, let's see whose fist is stronger. Gu Xian'er was horrified. Gu Yundong had really changed. She was no longer afraid of her and even dared to hit her? No, she must have seen that she had no backing. Her grandparents were not around, so she was the king. Seeing Gu Yundong like this, Gu Xian'er was still a little afraid. She could not help but take a step back. She braced herself and said, Aren't you afraid that I'll go out and shout at others, saying that you don't care about your cousin's life and death, that you have a cousin who is a servant in someone else's house and you won't save her? Gu Yundong did not care. Go. Let's see what the nanny who brought you here will think when she hears your words. Oh, she will probably realize that you think the Peng family is a tiger's den. If I don't redeem you, I will leave you in the lurch? Gu Xian'er's expression changed. She didn't dare. She had only been in the Peng residence for less than 2 months and was just a servant girl. Today, Granny Qian happened to see her cleaning the courtyard and brought her along. It was said that she had this opportunity because those 2nd and 3rd grade maidservants refused to come to this countryside. Along the way, she had already seen Nanny Qian's strictness. If she heard these words, She would definitely suffer when she returned to the Pang residence. In fact, she had improved a little in the 2 months she had been in the Pang residence. It was just that she had suddenly met Gu Yundong and was used to her previous way of doing things. Now that she saw that Gu Yundong was not easy to bully, she did not dare to be too arrogant. This was something that bullied the weak and feared the strong. Chapter 148. Your sister Gu Xian'er gritted her teeth. Are you really not afraid that others will say that you have a servant cousin? Aren't you afraid that the villagers will point fingers at you? I'm not the one who sold you. What am I afraid of? The Gao family in this village has a daughter who went to the prefectural city to be a servant girl. The Gao family still feels proud. Do you want to work hard and be a first-grade servant girl later so that I can bask in the glory? You. Gu Xian'er realized that not only had Gu Yundong become bolder, but even her words were harsh. She did not want to be a servant at all. She had to wake up at a fixed time every day and wash clothes after sweeping the courtyard. Anyone could order her around. She was so busy every day that she did not have any time to rest. She also wanted to live in a big house and wear new clothes. She had seen that the material of Gu Yundong's clothes today was very good. Gu Xian'er knew when to yield and when to stand tall. At the thought of this, she knelt down with a thud. Her tears came as she said, "Sister, you're my elder sister. Please help me. I really can't stay in the Pang residence anymore. I have endless work to do every day and I still have to be beaten and scolded. The only family I have here is you. We have the same blood flowing in our bodies. Moreover, we've also left our hometown and met here. This is God telling us sisters to take care of each other and support each other." She said sincerely and tearfully, "Big sister, I'm your sister." Gu Yundong took a few steps back and opened the door of the room. As he walked out he said, "I want to ask that Nanny Chen how the Pang family bullied you. Look at how terribly you're crying." Gu Xian'er immediately stood up without another word. She wiped her tears and walked out before Gu Yundong. Then she turned around fiercely. "Gu Yundong, you win. Just you wait. I won't let you have it easy." Gu Yundong crossed her arms and looked at her coldly. Gu Xian'er had already tidied up her clothes and went to Nanny Chen. When the surrounding guests saw her coming out, they all looked in her direction. They were curious about who this person was. She seemed to know the Gu girl. Was she someone from her hometown before the Gu girl fled? They wanted to ask, but she had already returned to Granny Chen's side. They still kept a certain distance from these people who had come from the Pang residence. However, they could not suppress the flames of gossip in their hearts. All of them wanted to ask the rest of the Gu family. They did not dare to ask Gu Yundong. With Madame Yang helping in the kitchen, there were only 2 children left. Someone stopped Gu Yunshu and asked him in a low voice, "Who was the maid from the Pang residence to you?" Gu Yunshu had always been worried. His impression of Gu Xian'er bullying his elder sister in the old Gu family was still there. Now that he saw Gu Xian'er coming out, he hurriedly ran towards his elder sister. After running a few steps, he rushed over and took Gu Yunka away. He still remembered that Gu Xian'er had spared no effort in bullying Gu Yunka in the past. What if she was beaten up if he left her here alone? Everyone, answer the question before you leave. Everyone was curious, and so was Granny Chen. She saw Gu Xian'er return with red eyes and looked like she had been wronged. She narrowed her eyes and lowered her voice. "What's going on? Do you know this family?" Chapter 149. Have to guard against Gu Xian'er. Gu Xian'er was slightly stunned. She lowered her head and wiped the corners of her eyes. Then she nodded and said softly, "Yes, that's my cousin." Nanny Chen was stunned and shocked. "Your cousin? Then you..." "Granny probably doesn't know that we fled here because of the famine in Yongning Prefecture. My cousin's family was chased out by my grandparents long ago. I was sold to human traffickers by my grandparents before I came to Pang Manor. I always thought that my cousin and the others were long gone. After all, my grandparents only gave them a few potatoes back then. Eldest aunt is a fool and my cousin has 2 young siblings. Eldest uncle has also disappeared." Nanny Chen really did not know Gu Xian'er's background. After all, she had only casually called a servant girl to carry things. And her cousin? Nanny Chen looked at the imposing green brick house in front of her and frowned slightly. Gu Xian'er sighed slightly and continued, "I was too shocked and excited to see cousin just now, so I couldn't help but say a few more words. I thought I would never see the Gu family again in my life. I didn't expect cousin to not only live well, but also have the money to build such a good house and even know young Master Peng. She's too capable. Nanny Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. She was young Madam's trusted subordinate. Today, Madam wanted her to find out who the Gu family was. Why would young Master ask them to send a gift over for no reason? When did he get to know such a country bumpkin? The problem was that this gift was personally prepared by the young Master. It was not cheap. She glanced at Xian'er and asked with narrowed eyes, "Then did your cousin tell you how she met the young master of our residence?" The person who had fled here had only arrived not long ago. There was no reason for young Master to know her. Xian'er shook her head. "I asked, but my cousin refused to tell me. She only told me to work hard in the Peng manner." Nanny Chen stopped talking and lowered her head slightly to take a sip of brown sugar water. Where did this little girl from the Gu family get so much money? Nanny Chen had met Liu Yi, but she had also asked around just now. It seemed that young Master Liu had just arrived at Yongfu village not long ago. Moreover, he had asked a hunter surnamed Shao to bring him into the mountains for hunting. He only got to know the little girl because the little girl from the Gu family lived next door to the Shao family. In addition, the Gu family was the only family in the village who had a carriage. Young Master Liu borrowed her family's carriage. With such a close relationship, the Gu family actually invited him over. After staying in a rich family for a long time, Nanny Chen's thoughts became more complicated. She felt that this girl from the Gu family was really good at climbing up the ladder. The capable Gu Yundong stood in the room and could not help but laugh at the two worried children. "Do you think she can still bully eldest sister now? Eldest sister will fight back." Gu Yunshu thought about it. "Yes, eldest sister is not easy to bully now." Then they were relieved. "All right, you don't have to worry about eldest sister. If you're really worried, go and protect mother." Gu Yundong patted their heads. When the two little guys heard this, it was as if they had received an important mission. They nodded very seriously and rushed to the Zhang family. The new house could not be used yet. They could only do the cooking at the Zhang family's house for the time being. The two of them left, but Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and looked in the direction of the front yard. Xian'er wasn't someone who would give up easily. She had to be careful. Chapter 150. Let the country bumpkins broaden their horizons. Gu Yundong was pondering when Shao Qingyuan arrived. He saw that she had not come out for a long time and was a little worried, so he came to take a look. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up when she saw him. "Shao Qingyuan, do me a favor. Tell me. That Xian'er, the woman who just came with me, is my cousin. Help me keep an eye on her today and see what she has done." Shao Qingyuan agreed without another word. "Okay." Then, he walked towards the front courtyard. However, he had only taken 2 steps when Gu Yundong stopped him. "Hey, wait, forget it. Your presence is too strong. It's too easy to be discovered if you keep an eye on her." Shao Qingyuan took 2 steps back and said, "Don't worry, I won't be discovered. You have to trust me." Gu Yundong was stunned. When she met his sincere gaze, she nodded inexplicably. Shao Qingyuan suddenly laughed and left. Gu Yundong stood silently on the spot. She actually felt that Shao Qingyuan was so handsome. She suddenly slapped her face and came back to her senses. What kind of situation was this? Why was she still infatuated? Gu Yundong composed herself and strode towards the front yard. The villagers greeted her one after another. Gu Yundong smiled and replied, ignoring the curious eyes of the gossipy crowd. She still walked up to Granny Chen and went to talk to Xian'er directly. She did not have the time to greet her. Nanny Chen's congratulatory gift had yet to be sent over. Logically speaking, she could have directly handed it to Madame Zhou, who was entertaining the guests at that time. However, she was from the Peng family and represented the master of the Peng family. She was also the richest and most powerful person present besides Liu Yi. She thought that she was superior. Compared to the villagers who only gave fruits, vegetables, eggs, and so on, the gifts they gave were much more valuable. Therefore, she naturally had to broaden the horizons of these people who had never seen the world. Nanny Chen reached back, and another maidservant placed the things on the table one by one. Nanny Chen smiled and said, "This is a congratulatory gift from my young madam to the Gu family. I hope Miss Gu doesn't mind. The people present couldn't help but look over. There was a fruit box with all kinds of famous pastries in the city. A calligraphy painting, which, according to Granny Qian, was written by a famous calligrapher from the previous dynasty. There was a screen with embroidery of the 8 spirits of the Golden Age on it. Also, cloth. The Peng family was the largest cloth merchant in Fengkai County. This was the most practical gift. Gu Yundong did not expect the Peng family to be so generous. Peng Zhongfei. Was he really frightened? Not to mention anything else. Just that calligraphy painting and that ornament were not easy to obtain. Liu Wei was also shocked. He thought of the gift he had given out previously and quietly pulled Luan over. Later, add another 20 taels of silver as a gift. Luan widened his eyes. Young master, you're too prodigal. Although he liked the Gu family was in the countryside after all. If he gave them too much, it would make them feel uneasy. If Gu Yundong knew what Luan was thinking, she would definitely kick him aside. What was there to be uneasy about? The more, the better. She could even smile in her dreams at night, okay? Did she look like someone who had never seen the world? Nanny Chen smiled and asked, Miss Gu, do you like them? She wanted to see Gu Yundong's flattered expression, but the latter nodded and calmly took the items. This is a token of your young madam's appreciation. Of course I like it. Chapter 151. Banquet. Gu Yundong could tell that Nanny Chen had become hostile ever since Gu Xian'er returned. She turned around and said to the others, Everyone is here to congratulate my family for building a new house. I like whatever they give me. The villagers, who had been shocked by the gift from the Peng family, immediately laughed. Feng Danning thought, no wonder the village chief said that this girl's words made him feel comfortable. Nanny Chen's smile stiffened slightly. Gu Yundong greeted her with a smile. There are many people today. I'm so busy that my feet don't even touch the ground. Please forgive me if I'm lacking in hospitality. Nanny, please help yourself. Nanny Chen nodded with a smile. Seeing that Gu Yundong had gone to another table, she sat down again and asked Gu Xian'er, Didn't you say that she's your cousin? But she doesn't sound like she came from the countryside at all. Gu Xian'er bit her lip slightly. My uncle studied when he was young, so my cousin learned a few words with him. So that was how it was. No wonder she spoke eloquently, as if she was afraid that others would not know that she could speak a few idioms. The more she lacked something, the more she wanted to show off. At this moment, everyone had already sat down. Shao Qingyuan was sitting not far from Granny Qian's table. Liu Wei was familiar with him, so he naturally sat at the same table as him. Sixth grandfather and the village chief were the most senior and prestigious people in the village. They naturally had to accompany Liu Wei, an esteemed guest from the city, so they sat at this table. The others also wanted to sit, especially Madame Feng and her daughter. There were a few times when they wanted to go to Liu Wei's side to greet him, but when they saw that Shao Qingyuan was around, they did not dare to. Therefore, this table was inexplicably much quieter. Chen Liang and the sixth grandfather were quite friendly to Shao Qingyuan and would occasionally chat with him during the meal. The dishes were served very quickly, and most of them were hard dishes. The villagers no longer cared about the Liu and Peng families. All of them reached out their chopsticks to pick up the meat with glowing faces. Nanny Chen brought 2 maidservants and sat with Madame Feng and her daughter. In fact, she could have left after delivering the gifts. However, after hearing Gu Xian'er's words, she could not help but sit a little longer. When the meat dishes were first served, she wanted to move her chopsticks. However, before she could move, the others at the table had already begun to snatch the dishes crazily. Nanny Chen's chopsticks stopped in midair. She could neither reach forward nor retract them. Gu Xian'er, who was beside her, was enjoying the food. She was a servant in the Peng family. Although she did not have to eat like she did when she was escaping, she still had to snatch food when it was time to eat. She did not have a background or ability, so she could only eat the leftovers. How could Gu Xian'er let go of such a rare hard dish? However, Nanny Chen could not stay any longer. Halfway through the meal, she still went to say goodbye to Gu Yundong. Gu Xian'er couldn't bear to leave, but there was nothing she could do. She stuffed 2 pieces of meat into her mouth forcefully before wiping her mouth and standing up. Wait for me outside. I'll go tell the master. She had originally wanted to bring Gu Xian'er along, but after half a day, she could tell that Gu Yundong and her cousin did not have a good relationship. Otherwise, why did she not even say a word to Gu Xian'er? Gu Xian'er and the other servant girl could only wait outside. However, the little girl was in a hurry to go to the toilet and left Gu Xian'er alone at the door. Gu Xian'er secretly sneered. Lazy people have a lot of feces and urine. As she spoke, she clasped her hands. It was really cold. She did not even have 2 pieces of clothing on her, but Gu Yundong could live so well. Just thinking about it made her feel unbalanced. Are you Gu Yundong's cousin? Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice came from behind. Chapter 152. You killed me this time. Gu Xian'er turned around and saw a girl who was slightly older than her standing there. She gave her a measuring look. Who are you? My name is Chen Yulan. Do you want to know about Gu Yundong? I can tell you. Chen Yulan sat at the same table as them. She had overheard her conversation with Nanny Qian. She was very surprised that the 2 of them were cousins. Gu Xian'er narrowed her eyes and sized up Chen Yulan. Did this person have a grudge against Gu Yundong? She knew it. Gu Yundong looked unlucky. She must have offended many people. Look, wasn't this just one? Granny Qian and the other girl had not arrived yet. Gu Xian'er looked around and said to Chen Yulan, let's talk over there. The 2 of them walked forward and stopped 20 meters away from the house. Gu Xian'er really wanted to know what happened after Gu Yundong came to Yongfu village. She wanted to know where she got the money. Chen Yulan spoke quickly. On the first day, she rented a carriage to serve as a noble and stayed in their house. Later on, she offended the hooligans in the village and was chased out by their family to stay at the Zhang family's house. She told them everything she knew. Gu Xian'er, on the other hand, frowned. She had said so much, but it was all nonsense. She did not say where Gu Yundong had gotten the money. She was fed up with hearing that. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something. She moved closer to Chen Yulan and whispered a few words into her ear. The latter's eyes lit up and she nodded repeatedly. All right, I know what to do. Gu Xian'er wanted to say more, but Granny Qian's impatient voice came from outside the Gu family's door. Gu Xian'er, where are you? Where did this brat go? Gu Xian'er was still afraid of Granny Qian. She didn't bother to talk to Chen Yulan anymore and ran away quickly. Nanny Qian glared at her unhappily before leading them into the carriage outside and leaving Yongfu village. The liveliness in the Gu family continued. Gu Yundong was really generous on such an important day. Not to mention the dishes, there were also a lot of snacks. Everyone was a little reluctant to leave after eating and drinking their fill. If not for the village chief telling everyone to disperse, these people would still be sitting in the courtyard eating melon seeds and chatting. Some of the women in the village stayed behind to help clear the table and cutlery. The Sure couple also stayed. The 2 of them had always been honest. After eating such good food today, they had to help work. Coincidentally, Gu Yundong had something to discuss with them, so she did not stop them. When most of the guests had left, she was about to look for the Sure couple when she saw Gu Yunshu run over and whisper in her ear mysteriously. Elder sister, brother Liu is looking for you. Liu Wei? Gu Yundong's eyes lit up when he thought of Wenzheng. Could it be that there was news of his return? Liu Wei was waiting for her by the well in the backyard. When Gu Yundong went over, he was holding his hair and walking back and forth anxiously. Gu Yundong was surprised. What could make young Master Liu want to tear his head off? Liu Wei suddenly turned around. Hey, you're finally here. I have something very important to tell you. He had been waiting for an entire day, but he endured it and waited for her to finish the banquet before looking for her. What is it? Tell me. You killed me this time. Liu Wei suddenly glared at her. Chapter 153. You're smart. You solve it. Gu Yundong was confused. She had been studying white sugar in seclusion for the past few days and had not gone out for more than 10 days. She had only started to prepare the things needed for the banquet yesterday. How did she harm him? You have to make yourself clear. What did I do? Liu Wei took 2 more steps back and forth before he gritted his teeth and said, Do you know that there's a rumor circulating in the upper circle of the county now? You said it yourself. How would I know about the upper echelons of the county? Gu Yundong could not help but roll her eyes. Liu Wei choked and didn't keep her in suspense anymore. He said directly, "It's all because you bragged in the Tao family's provision store last time." The next day, that kid from the Tao family specially came to me to verify the white sugar-making matter. Damn it, he actually deliberately brought that shopkeeper over to ask about this. Do you think I can deny it? I braced myself and had to help you lie. In the end, this sinister person spread the news after leaving my house. He said that the Liu family had found a capable person who could make white sugar as white as the clouds. Yundong was speechless. She was not boasting. She was not. Liu Wei didn't seem to have a high IQ. This matter has caused an uproar. Even my father knows about it. The smelly old man from the Tao family came to my father and mocked me. He said that I was ignorant, incompetent, and inexperienced in making friends, and in becoming more and more unreliable. Let me tell you, they can laugh at me, but they can't laugh at my father. Yesterday, that Tao family came to my house again. He was very cunning. He deliberately angered me so much that I used the 2 shops in my family to gamble. Now, all the young masters in the county say that I will lose. Liu Wei, gambling is a very unacceptable behavior. Moreover, you actually gambled so much, Yundong said. The first time she saw him, she felt that he was a wastrel. She began to sympathize with his father. That's not the point. Liu Wei was about to go crazy. This matter started because of you. What do you think we should do? The corners of Yundong's mouth twitched as if she was looking at a retard. You're simply being shameless, aren't you? Even without me, your family and the Tao family already have a deep grudge. Sooner or later, they'll find another reason to trick you. Liu Wei couldn't win against her. Of course, he knew that those people were being shameless. However, he said, "You're smart. You settle it." Sigh, he needed to be taught a lesson. Yundong clenched her fists, but when she thought of the 20 taels of silver she received from him, she endured it. All right, on account of this wastrel's generosity, she would help him resolve it. It was mutually beneficial. Yundong rolled her eyes and said to him, "Wait here." With that, she turned around and left the backyard, returning to the main house. As soon as the door closed, she took out a jar from her space. Looking at the thin white and sweet sugar inside, Yundong smiled in satisfaction. When she came out again, she realized that Shao Qingyuan, who had left earlier, had returned. Seeing that there was no one around, Shao Qingyuan walked to her side and said softly, "Chen Yulan went to look for Xian'er." The 2 of them talked for a long time outside. What did they say? Chen Yulan? Why was this person so restless? She couldn't be bothered with her anymore. The mother and daughter were still jumping out. Did they really think that she wouldn't dare to touch them because they had an uncle who was the village chief? I didn't hear them clearly. They're too far away and there's nothing to cover me. It's not easy to get close. Shao Qingyuan pursed his lips and looked very dissatisfied. I followed the mother and daughter just now. They seem to have gone straight back. They didn't do anything for the time being. It's fine. It's enough to know that these 2 are in cahoots, Yundong said. Shao Qingyuan was about to ask if he needed to do anything when he saw Liu Wei running out impatiently. Chapter 154. It's really white sugar. Goo girl, why did you take so long? Have you thought of a solution? Liu Wei did not seem to see Shao Qingyuan. He reached out to pull Yundong the moment he arrived. Shao Qingyuan blocked him. Just talk. Don't touch her. Only then did Liu Wei react. He quickly retracted his hand, but the expression on his face was still extremely anxious. Goo girl, how is it? Yundong ignored him and walked to the backyard. People were coming over at any time. When they reached the backyard, Yundong handed the jar in his hand to Liu Wei. The latter was stunned. What is it? Why don't you take a look? Liu Wei could only suppress the anxiety in his heart and open the lid of the jar. Then, under the sunlight, it looked especially dazzling. Liu Wei blinked. What is this? He had a very surreal guess, and he even became a little excited because of this unlikely guess. You can try it. Yundong smiled. Liu Wei hurriedly reached into the jar to grab it, but the jar was too small and his hand was too big. He couldn't reach down even after holding it for a long time. Yundong rolled his eyes. You can dip a finger in. before she could finish speaking. She saw him holding the jar in one hand and pouring out a large handful with the other. Then he stuck out his tongue and licked it. The next moment, his pupils constricted and he looked at Yundong in shock. Sweet. Aha. This is white sugar, Yundong said with a smile. Liu Yi's breathing suddenly stopped. He looked at the little girl in front of him in disbelief. Her chin was not even up to his chin. His lips could not help but tremble. Sugar that's like white clouds? Yundong looked up at the sky and then at the sugar. He thought for a moment and said, "What do you think?" Liu Yi was dumbfounded. She made it, she really made it. She was not boasting. This sugar was sweet and tasted different from brown sugar, but it was even sweeter. Liu Yi was extremely shocked. How could she be so capable? Ha 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 ha. Liu Yi was stunned for a long time before he suddenly laughed. At first, he laughed intermittently, but later on, he actually laughed out loud. He laughed until his entire face turned red, and his entire body even trembled. Liu An, who was originally guarding the entrance of the backyard, was shocked. He thought that something had happened and hurriedly ran over. Seeing that the young master was about to go crazy, Liu An's heart skipped a beat and he was about to cry. He quickly went forward and patted him. Young master, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me. What happened to you? Let's talk nicely. Liu Yi was almost suffocated by his slap. He suddenly kicked him. Go away. Then he held the jar in front of Yundong and said with shining eyes, Girl, you're amazing. How did you do it? What was it made of? Did you make it yourself? Yundong was about to reply when Liu Yi waved his hand again. Forget it. We'll talk about this later. The most important thing now is to bring this jar of white sugar to Tao. I want him, this stupid person, to open his dog eyes and see what white sugar is. He couldn't help but laugh as he spoke. He took the jar and left. Chapter 155. You're mine. However, he had only taken 2 steps when he was stopped by Shao Qingyuan. Liu Yi widened his eyes. Shao Qingyuan, what are you doing? As he spoke, he hid the jar behind his back, as if he was afraid that Shao Qingyuan would snatch it away. He could defend against Shao Qingyuan, but not against Yundong. Yundong heaved a sigh of relief when she immediately took the jar behind him. Fortunately, Shao Qingyuan moved quickly. This Liu Yi was a fool. Before she could finish speaking, he wanted to shout everywhere. She really wanted to beat him up. Liu Yi stretched out his hand. Give it back to me. What do you mean by give it back to you? This is mine. Could this person have any self-awareness? Liu Yi was instantly dejected, but he quickly said energetically, then sell it to me. How much is this jar? Yundong rolled her eyes. I refined this candy, but I only have this one can. Liu Yi was stunned. Is it very difficult to make it? Yes, it must be very, very difficult. He was considered to be from a knowledgeable family, but he had never seen such clean, sweet, and thin white sugar. In that case, the girl was simply a genius. Moreover, there was only 1 jar of white sugar in this world. How expensive would such a rare thing be? Liu Yi counted his private savings in his heart, not knowing if it was enough. But before he could calculate it, Yundong shook his head. It's not that difficult. Huh. Yundong said, I've been perfecting the process of making sugar for more than 10 days. Previously, my technique was unstable and I did refine a lot of white sugar, but I was most satisfied with this jar. Before the apocalypse, she knew the process and method of making sugar and had tried before. However, at that time, there was a professional mentor guiding her. Moreover, the tools were ready-made. Now that she was alone, whether it was sugarcane or other things, she had to prepare them from scratch. It was not until she did it herself that she realized that she had forgotten some subtle steps, so she had to experiment again and again. Some steps were not that simple. If she was not careful, the white sugar refined would be very different from the ones in the jar now. Fortunately, after more than 10 days, she was used to it and there were no major problems. Liu Yi understood and his eyes began to light up. Since you said that there's no problem, can you give me this jar of candy? Not yet. Why not? 1 jar is too few. Back then, I said 20 catties at the grocery store. Don't you want to show that Tao guy 20 caddies? Secondly, do you think many people will want to get the formula and cause trouble for me if you go out with such white sugar now? Lu Wei was stunned. Beside him, Shao Qingyuan also frowned. This last point was indeed a troublesome matter. At that time, the Tao family would probably be the first to have ideas. Lu Wei couldn't help but pull his hair again. Then what should we do? I'm looking for a backer. There was no patent now, but even if there was, it was useless to meet someone with power and influence. Gu Yundong had learned her lesson from Peng Zhongfei. If he dared to take her blueprint for himself so blatantly, others would also do whatever they could when they saw the huge benefits in the white sugar. Lu Wei nodded in agreement. Then his eyes lit up. With our Lu family as your backer, everyone in the county thinks that you're mine. Shao Qingyuan suddenly looked at him. What did he mean by you're mine? Chapter 156. So Gu Yundong is so insidious. Shao Qingyuan immediately denied it. Not enough. Lu Wei straightened his neck and wanted to retort, but Gu Yundong agreed. It's indeed not enough. Then who are you looking for? Lu Wei was unconvinced. The Lu family was considered one of the best in the county, right? Besides, their Lu family also had someone backing them. Gu Yundong said, last time, you said that the emperor intended for Qin Wenzheng to return to the court. Is the news accurate? Of course. He paused and narrowed his eyes. You want Qin Wenzheng to be your backer? Well, Qin Wenzheng was indeed a very suitable candidate. However, he said, will he agree? Actually, our Lu family is not bad. You can even work with our family. Our family has channels and connections. Your sugar will definitely sell well. This brat finally thought of helping his family with business. This white sugar was a new thing and was very expensive. It was unique. The Lu family was already planning to leave the county city and walk to the prefectural city. This white sugar had come at the right time. Last time, you said that Qin Wenzheng went out. It's been so many days. Has he returned to the county? There was another reason why Gu Yundong did not want to work with the Lu family. The Lu family was in business. It was business. They could cooperate in the future. It would be easier to settle the score if everything was clear. However, if they were her backer, she had no advantage at all. She could only do whatever the Lu family said. However, Qin Wenzheng was an official. She would give him a certain amount of profit. He would be her protective umbrella. They would each take what they needed. Of course, the prerequisite was that she had to meet Qin Wenzheng first and see if he was really as the rumors said. Lu Wei was still indignant. Qin Wenzheng is focused on the people and the country. He might not be willing to be your backer. Refining such fine white sugar can be considered a big step forward for the development of the country. Isn't it considered serving the country and the people? What if he asks you to give the secret recipe directly to the imperial court? If what he offers is enough to move me, it's not impossible. Gu Yundong had never thought of keeping this secret recipe to herself. Sooner or later, the yellow mud method would flourish. Lu Wei couldn't refute her. He mumbled, Brother Qin is back. Then, he looked at the jar in her hand and asked, You really can't give this to me? His expression of I can't wait to slap the white sugar on Tao's face and mock him for being ignorant and ask him to hand over the shops that he has lost was simply blinding. Can't you stand it? Give me another 10 days at most, and I'll give you 20 pounds. All right. It was so difficult to endure for 10 days. Gu Yundong said, Actually, you can use these 10 days to let Tao show off in front of you again. Then you can take the opportunity to increase the stakes. When that time comes. Lu Wei looked at Gu Yundong. Was this girl so sinister? Still he liked it. Ha, you're too smart. You're right. This time, I'll let Tao shoot himself in the foot and make him bleed. After saying that, Lu Wei turned around and ran away. Luan, let's go back. Luan hurriedly responded and followed. Gu Yundong watched as he ran away like a gust of wind. He could not help but turn to Shao Qingyuan and say, Do you think I'll be affected by him being so silly? Just stay away from him in the future. Gu Yundong nodded in agreement. However, halfway through, he suddenly clapped his hands. Oh no, I forgot to tell him that this matter is confidential. Don't tell the Liu family for the time being. Chapter 157. Gu Yundong's image is ruined. Gu Yundong hurriedly turned around and left, but by the time she reached the door, Liu Wei's carriage had already run far away. Shao Qingyuan frowned. I'll chase after him. With that, he ran to the back of the carriage. Gu Yundong sighed. Just as she was about to turn around, she suddenly saw a figure poking his head out of her door. When he saw her looking over, he quickly turned around and left. Gu Yundong squatted down to pick up a small stone and threw it at him. The man's head was hit squarely and he immediately stopped. Gu Yundong walked towards him. You ran away when you saw me. Why? Did you do something guilty again? You're sneaking around outside my house. Could it be that you're targeting my house again? Of course not. Zhuangzi suddenly turned around and hurriedly denied it. Seeing Gu Yundong's serious expression, his thumb, which had already recovered, began to hurt again. Zhuangzi could not help but take a small step back. I heard from my sister that my parents came to eat here when I returned home at noon. I was curious and came over to take a look. Zhuangzi really did not know that his parents were in contact with Gu Yundong. He usually could not stand his parents' cowardly personality, so their relationship was very stiff. They would not say these things. Moreover, he had not been at home for a period of time. Ever since he completely fell out with Hu Liang, without him taking the lead, he did not take the initiative to cause trouble for others. His family still owed Gu Yundong a tale of silver, so he went to town to see if there was any work to be done. Unexpectedly, when he came back today, only his younger sister was at home. His parents did not come back for lunch. His younger sister said that the Gu family was going to set up the beam today. Their parents had gone to the Gu family to eat. Zhuangzi was really shocked. When did his parents become so bold as to go to the Gu residence to freeload? He was uneasy at home. After hesitating for a while, he still came over to take a look. However, he did not expect to be caught red-handed by Gu Yundong. Now, not only did he not save his parents, but he also implicated himself. Gu Yundong did not know that he thought this place was a wolf's den or a tiger's den, but she did not like the way he looked at her as if she was the devil. At this moment, Yi came out of the Zhang family's house after washing the dishes. When she saw Zhuangzi standing at the door, she was stunned and hurriedly walked over. Why are you here? Have you eaten lunch? Zhuangzi nodded. Yes. Then, he looked up and down at Yi. Mother, are you injured? Huh. What was he asking? I was just washing the dishes. How could I be injured? Where's father? Your father went to help move the tables. He should be back soon. The tables and chairs of the Gu family were borrowed from other families in the village. After cleaning up the utilities, they naturally had to return them. Gu Yundong was speechless. She finally understood that Zhuangzi treated her as if she was a demon. F***ck. Had her image been ruined to this extent? Gu Yundong could not help but rub her temples. She secretly took a deep breath and suppressed the violent emotions in her heart. Then she turned around and said kindly to Yi, Auntie He, go in and drink some brown sugar water to warm up. I have something to tell Zhuangzi. Yes, impression of Gu Yundong had changed a lot. She knew that this girl was actually reasonable, so she nodded. Okay. There were many children playing outside the gate. The two of them were not alone. It was fine to talk in the countryside. Chapter 158. Finding work for Zhuangzi. Zhuangzi looked at her uneasily. He looked around, as if he was looking for an opportunity to escape at any time. What are you going to tell me? I'll return that silver to you soon. Give me a few more days. No, give me another. No, 2 months. Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. Don't worry, I'm not asking you for the debt. I just want to ask you for a favor. A favor? Zhuangzi blinked in shock. She still needed his help? For some reason, he felt a little proud. That's right. If you agree, you don't have to return the money. All right. What favor are you talking about? I agree. She hadn't even said anything about the favor, but he dared to agree so quickly. Wasn't he afraid that she would make him commit murder and arson? Gu Yundong glanced at him and lowered her voice slightly. Help me keep an eye on Chen Yulan and her mother. See what they have done and who they are meeting. The moment she saw Zhuangzi, she felt that he was the most suitable candidate. He was a hooligan to begin with. He usually had nothing to do and did not work in the fields. Even if he wandered around the village all day, no one would find it strange. Moreover, Zhuangzi was quite smart. At the very least, he understood the situation better than Hu Liang. Zhuangzi was a little confused. Keep an eye on Chen Yulan and her mother? Why? Could it be that Madame Feng was finally having an affair with another man? Were they going to catch them in the act? Zhuangzi was a little excited. He was happy to do this. He had thought that there was something huge he needed to do. It was such a small matter. In order to add some gossip to the village, Zhuangzi expressed that it would not be a problem even if he was not allowed to drink or sleep. For how long? Gu Yundong did not know why he was so excited. A month. Based on her understanding of Gu Xian'er, if she was in cahoots with Chen Yulan, she would not be able to resist the urge to do something bad within a month. Gu Xian'er was in the Pang residence, so it wasn't easy to keep an eye on her. Similarly, Gu Xian'er didn't have many chances to plot against her. As for Chen Yulan, it was enough for Zhuangzi to keep an eye on her. Zhuangzi quickly calculated in his heart. Yes, it was only a month, but he could erase the debt of more than one tael of silver. It was much more profitable than him working outside. Moreover, it was farm time now. The strong laborers of the various villages had gone out to work. It was too difficult for a hooligan like him, who could not lift anything heavy, to find work. After talking to Zhuangzi, Gu Yundong let him go. Zhuangzi was also dedicated to his work. When he returned, he went to squat near Madame Fang's house. As soon as he left, Madame Zhou and the rest also came out of the Zhang family home. The cutlery and other things had already been cleaned up. A portion of the leftovers was left behind, and Gu Yundong had let them split it up and leave. In addition, everyone was given a caddy of brown sugar. Madame Zhou and the others were overjoyed. Nowadays, sugar was very expensive. They only bought a little more than a caddy a year. Usually, they could not bear to eat it. They only ate it during the New Year or during confinement. Unexpectedly, Gu Yundong gave them one caddy each, especially Madame Zhou. She and her daughter-in-law, Madame Song, came to help, but Gu Yundong gave her 2 caddies. Madame Zhou beamed with joy and almost treated her as her biological daughter. Perhaps only Madame Dong knew how much brown sugar Gu Yundong had. To others, brown sugar was very precious, but to Gu Yundong, it was the most suitable gift. After Madame Zhou and the others left, Gu Yundong carried the remaining brown sugar into her new home. Shi Dashan and He Yi were still waiting for her there. Chapter 159. Buying a small mountain. Shi Dashan and his wife did not know why Gu Yundong wanted them to stay. At this moment, they were sitting upright in the central room and quietly looking at the brand new house. No matter what, living in such a house was enviable and comfortable. They did not know when they could build one. If they built a new house, Zhuangzi would not have to worry about getting a wife. However, they were still in debt. The two of them looked at each other and sighed. Gu Yundong came in at this time. Seeing this, she could not help but laugh. What's wrong? Uncle and Aunt Shi must have waited for a long time. I'm sorry. The two of them quickly stood up. Not long, not long. Yundong asked us to stay and talk about something. What exactly is it? If you need help, just tell us. I really have something to ask Uncle and Aunt Shi for help with. Gu Yundong asked the two of them to sit and fetched water for them. Then she sat opposite them and said, I went to see Uncle Shi's fruit forest. The fruits planted are really good. I want to buy land to specially plant fruits. The workload is a little large, so I want you to help me take a look at the most suitable land in this village or the neighboring village. If you can handle it, I also want you to help me manage the fruit forest. Of course, I still have to hire more people, and the salary will not be low. The couple was stunned and looked at her in disbelief. Fruit forest? Yes, I don't know if you're willing. Gu Yundong more or less understood the couple's personalities. They were actually very enthusiastic about planting fruit trees and took care of their fruit forest as if it was their children. When she went to their field back then, she saw the couple looking at their fruit forest with pure satisfaction. It was really infectious. Did they think of planting more fruits? Of course they did. However, they were too timid. The things that had happened in the past scared them, so they didn't dare to do it again. That was why Yundong wanted them to help manage the orchard. She thought that when they saw large fruit orchards one day, they would be filled with a sense of accomplishment. As expected, the couple looked at each other with excitement in their eyes. How big? Xian'er asked. I can't tell how big it is now. It depends on whether there is land. Of course, the bigger the better, Yundong said. Even if it was small now, she could buy more in the future. So, what kind of fruit tree do you want to grow? The soil needed for various fruits was naturally different. Some could be planted together, but some were not suitable. Yundong felt that the thing that needed to be planted in large quantities at the moment was sugarcane. Xian'er thought for a moment and said, Actually, there's a small mountain on the east side of our village. It's very suitable, but it's not very big. Really? Yes, I used to think about buying that place when I had the money. But later, he did not dare to. It's about 30 acres. Do you want to take a look? Yes. Yundong immediately stood up and followed Xian'er and his wife to the eastern mountain. Although it was called a mountain, it was actually a slope. Of course, it was different from the deep mountains. She couldn't tell anything. Even after reading 2 books, she still didn't understand what sand, loam, and clay were. However, looking at Xian'er's happy expression, she knew that this was a good land. After looking around, Yundong went to look for the village chief. Liang did not expect that she had already decided to buy a small mountain before he could help her find a good land. Chapter 160. Something strange bit me. That mountain was not very expensive. When everyone had money, they would buy fertile land first. Few people were willing to take such a mountain that was suitable for planting fruit trees. After all, fruits were not easy to grow and sell. One was expensive. Rich people had their own manors and orchards and rarely bought fruits outside. Those who didn't have money couldn't afford them. If they wanted to eat fruits, they would go to the mountains to pick some wild sweet fruits. Secondly, it was not easy to preserve them. There were too many plants. Once they matured in one go, they had to be sold quickly, or they would rot. However, everyone was from the countryside and had no channels or connections. At most, they would be dragged to the county city. Hence, Yundong bought the 30 acres of land for 120 taels of silver. As soon as she paid, she instantly felt that her money was a little tight again. Since she had already bought the land, Xian'er said to her, If you want to plant sugarcane, we can start preparing sucrose ditches on the ground now and choose the seedlings. Yundong knew that sugarcane was usually planted from February to April. It could be harvested from November to April. It was November in the lunar calendar, so the preliminary preparations could begin. In this aspect, Xian'er and his wife were still the best. Yundong left it to them. Yundong wrote an agreement in front of the village chief and asked him to be a witness. She gave them 20 taels of silver in advance, so that they could choose the seedlings. As for whether the two of them could handle it and whether they needed to hire people, that was up to them. Yundong was not afraid that they would not be able to control the workers. Wasn't Zhuangzi around? That kid actually cared a lot about his parents and family. Both parties pressed their handprints. Xian'er's hand that was holding the 20 taels of silver trembled slightly. He did not expect Yundong to trust him so much. Wasn't he afraid that he would take her money? After settling this matter, Yundong was relieved. The house had been built, the mountain had been bought, and the sugarcane had been taken care of. As for the planting of other fruits, she still had to get Xian'er to help search for suitable land when he was free. If he didn't even have land, he really wouldn't be able to do anything. Yundong returned to the new house in a relaxed manner. At this moment, Madame Yang and the 2 children were walking around the house, looking very happy. Seeing her return, they immediately surrounded her. Eldest sister, when are we moving in? Yunshu liked the new house very much. He had never thought that he could have such a big room and a study. The furniture will be here in 2 days. Let the sun shine for another 10 days before we move in. Yundong also wanted to move in as soon as possible. Although Dong Xiaolin's family was not bad, it was more comfortable to live in her own house. She pointed at the main room in front of her and said, That room is for father and mother. Other than that room you can choose any. Yunshu pointed to the room on the left. I choose that one. Yundong looked at Yunka again, but the young girl suddenly hugged her leg. Do I have to live alone? It's scary. Something strange is biting my hand. Yundong was stunned. Yes, she was only 3 years old. She was still too young. She picked up the little girl. Then Kiki will sleep with mother. When you grow up, you can choose a room you like, okay? She was going to stay in a room by herself anyway. The little girl immediately nodded. Okay. Then she whispered into Yundong's ear. Mother is also afraid. I'll accompany mother. Yundong looked at Madame Yang. As expected, when she heard that she was sleeping with Yunka, she heaved a sigh of relief. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She had been negligent. Although her mother was an adult, her mind was similar to Kiki's. Yundong could not help but look at Yunshu. Chapter 161. Cart of Sugarcanes. The little boy seemed to have thought of something and looked uneasy. Yundong rubbed her forehead. All right, actually, this kid was also afraid, but he just didn't say it. Yunshu, can you accompany mother and sister for a while more? This house was big after all, and it was a brand new and unfamiliar place for them. Yunshu was only 5 years old. After the excitement of seeing a new house had passed, she still felt very uneasy. After all, in the old Gu family, their family of 5 only had 1 room. Yunshu immediately puffed out his chest. I'm not afraid. There was no such thing as ghosts. Yes, his father had once said that strange powers did not disturb the mind. What third uncle had said about hanging headless ghosts in the past was all lies. Of course Yunshu isn't afraid, but the weather is cold now. You'll catch a cold easily if you sleep alone. When spring comes, you can stay in any room you want. Okay. Yunshu nodded vigorously. Then, he lowered his head and quietly exhaled. Yundong immediately smiled. She took the 2 children's hands and walked to the room. She started talking about the decorations. Yunshu had carefully planned her room. There was a desk here and a cabinet there. Yunka was much simpler. The young lady was a little vain now and said that she wanted to plant flowers in the room. Previously, Zhang had brought her to the foot of the mountain to pick some wild flowers. She had brought back a lot and placed them in a corner, saying that they smelled good. Madame Yang didn't say anything. In any case, she would nod no matter what the 2 children said. By the time the family of 4 finished exploring all the rooms, it was almost time for dinner. Shao Qingyuan had just returned, but there was a carriage behind him. He pulled the carriage into the backyard of Yundong's new house. She lifted the curtain and saw that it was filled with sugarcane. Yundong looked at him in surprise. There was still sweat on Shao Qingyuan's forehead on such a cold day, but the corners of his mouth were slightly cracked. He smiled and said, I've caught up with Liu Yi. Don't worry, he promised not to tell his family. He knows that you need sugarcane to make sugar, so he asked me to pull the sugarcane planted in his village. Yundong's mouth twitched. No wonder he came back so late. After some thought, she asked Shao Qingyuan, it's free, right? Ahem, of course. Shao Qingyuan lowered his head slightly. He wanted to laugh but held it in. Yundong nodded in satisfaction. At least he knows a little about the ways of the world. She could help him win too, perhaps more shops later. She saw Shao Qingyuan's travel-worn appearance and thought about how he had helped her keep an eye on Xian'er even though he hadn't eaten much for lunch. Later on, he had chased after Liu Yi to transport the sugarcane. She immediately felt a little guilty. She seemed to be ordering him around too naturally. Why didn't this person know how to refuse? What do you want to eat tonight? I'll make it for you. Shao Qingyuan thought for a moment and said in a low voice, egg fried rice. All right, rest first. I'll be done soon. She rolled up her sleeves and went to the Zhang family's kitchen. Shao Qingyuan looked at her back and shook his hand slightly. His eyes were deep and there was a smile on his lips. In the next 2 days, the furniture for the new house arrived. Yundong also moved the sugar-making tools to the new house. After all, the courtyard here was big and there was a well. It was much more convenient. Liu Yi came again the next day. He said in a hurry that the Tao family had indeed gone to find trouble with him. He was beaming with joy as he recounted how he had tricked the Tao family. Just as Gu Yundong despised him for spouting saliva, Xian'er came knocking on her door. Chapter 162. Shao Qingyuan gave silver. Gu Yundong secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She quickly escaped from Liu Yi's torment and ran out of the door. Xian'er was sweating profusely, but his face was filled with excitement. When Gu Yundong let him in, he immediately waved his hand and said, "Yundong, didn't you say that you wanted to find more fruit forests? There are 50 acres of fruit forest in Anping village next door. A landlord in town urgently needed money and took them out to sell." Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. Anping village was not far away and there were 50 acres. That was a rare opportunity. Xian'er continued, "That land was originally planted with fruit trees. It's a good land. It's just that the landowner doesn't know how to plant them, so the fruits they produce are astringent. 2 years ago, they cut down fruit trees and planted some other things. The harvest wasn't very good, so they didn't manage it very well. Now that they're selling it, the price should be able to be lowered. It's just that the landowner asks the buyer to buy all 50 acres. This." At the end, Xian'er was a little worried. It would cost a lot of money to buy this land. He did not know if she had enough. Gu Yundong also calculated the money in her heart. She could not help but frown. She was tight on money. However, her eyes quickly lit up. She said to Xian'er, "I'll borrow the silver from someone else first. Uncle Dashan, help me go to Anping village and ask around. See if there's anyone else who wants to buy it and how much you can lower the price." "All right." Xian'er immediately turned around and left. He happened to know someone in Anping village. It was Gaoxing's father, Zhao Zhu. Due to Gaoxing's close relationship with Zhuangzi, he had interacted with Zhao Zhu a lot. After a while, he became much more familiar with him. Gu Yundong also hurried back to her room to look for Liu Yi. Coincidentally, with such a rich young master around, it was not difficult to borrow money. When the sugar was sold for a good price later, she would have the ability to return the money to him. At most, she would only need the money for liquidity for half a month. Unexpectedly, when she reached the front yard, she did not see Liu Yi, who was still talking confidently just now. There was only Shao Qingyuan there. "Where's young Master Liu?" Shao Qingyuan was holding a hoe and helping her rummage through the garden in the front yard. When he heard this, he stopped and said, "He left." "Left?" F***CK, who said that he would talk about tricking Tao for a day and a night. She had only turned around to talk to Uncle Dashan, and he had already left? Shao Qingyuan leaned the hoe against the wall. "I think he suddenly remembered something urgent. Why are you looking for him? He shouldn't have gone far yet. I'll call him back." With that, he was about to leave. Gu Yundong recalled that he had also run to chase after Liu Yi, who was sitting in the carriage. In the end, he did not even eat lunch or dinner and looked exhausted. She hurriedly called out to him, "Wait, I'm fine." Although she said that, her brows were still slightly furrowed. Suddenly, she looked up at Shao Qingyuan. Yes, if Liu Yi wasn't around, wasn't there still Shao Qingyuan? Gu Yundong immediately walked to his side with a smile and coughed lightly. There was an obvious purpose on her face. Shao Qingyuan raised his eyebrows. "What's wrong? Can you lend me some silver?" Not long ago, Shao Qingyuan had brought Liu Yi to the mountains to hunt 2 roe deers and a tiger. Liu Yi was generous and had promised to give him 100 taels of silver as long as Shao Qingyuan brought him into the mountains to hunt roe deers. In the end, Shao Qingyuan not only caught 2 roe deers, but also a tiger. In the end, he even saved Liu Yi's life. Gu Yundong did not ask how much money was given, but it was definitely a lot. "Wait for me." Shao Qingyuan didn't even ask why she wanted money. He turned around and returned to his house. Not long after, he came over with a box. "Here you go." Gu Yundong was stunned. Wasn't this too straightforward? She slowly opened the box. The next second, her eyes widened. Chapter 163. Gu Yundong's decision. Gu Yundong raised her head in a daze and looked at the calm person opposite her. She reached out and took out the banknotes from the box. She counted them again and again. 800 taels. He actually had 800 taels of silver. This person was actually an invisible tycoon. In the entire Yongfu village, there was probably no one richer than him. But the problem was, you have so much money, yet you still eat dry steamed buns, live in a dilapidated house, and wear clothes filled with patches? Even if he didn't know how to cook, hiring someone shouldn't be a problem, right? There was no need to live like a refugee. Qingyuan glanced at the banknotes in her hand. His eyes were as calm as if it was just a few ordinary pieces of paper. There was no emotion in them. After a while he said, "It doesn't matter. I'm all alone." Yundong suddenly paused. She actually felt that his words made her heart ache for some reason. Yes, he had always been alone. He had no family or friends. Even in the Zhang family, he kept a distance from them. He was neither close nor on good terms with them. The people in the village regarded him as a ferocious beast. When children saw him, they would avoid him as much as possible. He was a loner. Whether he had money or not, it was meaningless to him. He just needed to eat his fill and wear warm clothes. He did not need a higher quality of life. Everyone called him a wolf cub, but Yundong had never seen him do anything to hurt others. Even if he did, it was someone else who provoked him first, or a hooligan like Liang. She didn't know why Qingyuan's attitude was so cold even after his grandfather died, but she believed that there must be some unknown reason. Yundong tightened her grip slightly. For a moment, her mood became a little complicated. After a long time she slowly exhaled and said, 300 taels should be enough for me. She took out 6 banknotes worth 50 taels and handed the box over. Qingyuan shook his head and didn't take it. "I'll give it all to you. You can use it. If it's not enough, I'll think of another way." Qingyuan, money is useless by my side. You should still buy land and fruit trees. There are many places where you need to spend a lot of money. You can buy land too. Qingyuan paused and said in a low voice, "The village won't sell the land to me." "Why not?" Yundong was surprised. As far as she knew, although Chen Liang was not very close to Qingyuan, he would not have any bad opinions of him. He was just like an ordinary villager. It was not to the extent that the village chief would not sell the land to him, right? Qingyuan didn't think there was anything inappropriate to say. Everyone in the village knew about this. When I left the Li family back then, in order to repay them for raising me, I promised in front of the village chief and everyone that I wouldn't buy an acre of land. Yundong was so angry that she wanted to laugh. "You're not allowed to buy land just because they raised you? That's ridiculous. What were you thinking back then?" "Back then, as long as I could sever ties with the Li family, any conditions wouldn't be difficult." Perhaps because of the past, Qingyuan's gaze gradually became a little cold. Seeing this, Yundong quickly changed the topic. "Forget it. It's all in the past. Then your 800 taels. You use it." Qingyuan's tone was firm. Yundong pursed her lips and looked up at him, then at the banknotes in his hand, and then at him. After a while, she suddenly seemed to have made a major decision and looked at Qingyuan solemnly. Chapter 164. Buying another 50 acres. Since you know that I'm making white sugar, you should have guessed that I'll definitely turn this into a business in the future. Yundong said, "How about this? Since you have no use for the silver, I'll use this silver as a share for you. When the time comes, I'll give you 20% of the profits from selling white sugar. How about that?" She thought for a moment and added, "But it's just the sugar business. If I have other businesses in the future, you won't have a share." Yundong had thought about it. She was the only one who knew how to refine white sugar. She had a lot of things to do. In the future, she would have to make dried sweets and fruits. She would have to find someone she could trust to share the burden. Qingyuan was alone without any relatives or friends. Moreover, he was brave and resourceful. He was not a soft-hearted person. Most importantly, she realized that this person had a tacit understanding with her. Working with such a person would save her a lot of trouble. Most importantly, she realized that Qingyuan was very obedient. Of course, there was also her hidden selfishness. Qingyuan was stunned. He didn't expect her to make such a suggestion to involve him in what she was doing. He clenched his fists by his side, as if he was trying his best to control the emotions in his eyes. Seeing that he did not speak in a long time, Yundong asked softly, do you think it's too little? Then, 10%. Shao Qingyuan suddenly looked up and interrupted her. 10% is enough. Isn't it a little too little? Why did she feel an inexplicable sense of guilt? It's enough. It's enough. His eyes were bright as he looked at Yundong and smiled. In the future, I'll do whatever you want me to do. There was no need to find an excuse. Yundong was speechless. These words sounded strange. But the matter was settled. Yundong received 800 taels of silver and signed an agreement with Shao Qingyuan. Yundong immediately went to the neighboring village and bought the 50 acres of fruit forest. The crops in the field were indeed not good. She did not know how the landlord planted them. As the landlord was in a hurry, and very few people could buy 50 acres of land in one go, Yundong's glib tongue kept lowering the price. In the end, they agreed on 8 taels per acre, which cost her 400 taels. Yundong felt that this money was really easy to go. It went out in a flash. She asked Dashan to help find fruit trees suitable for planting. She did not plan to plant sugarcane in these 50 acres. Once everything was settled, Yundong focused on making sugar again. Liu Yi came again every 2 days to check on the progress, but he was chased away by Yundong. If you come here every day, what if the Tao family finds out that something is wrong? If you expose white sugar in advance, you will lose your bet. Liu Yi suddenly reacted. Yes. You're right. I'll go back now. When I go back, I'll pretend that I'm at my wit's end and fly into a rage. I'll let them be smug for a few days. With that, he hurried home. The corners of Yundong's mouth twitched. Now that she was working with Shao Qingyuan, she naturally handed him the method to make sugar. Since Shao Qingyuan dared to hand over all his assets to her, Yundong naturally would not let him down. There was no need to hide the method of making sugar. It had to be said that Shao Qingyuan got the hang of it much faster than her. With his help, their speed became much faster. After another day, Yundong carried more than 20 catties of white sugar to the county city. Chapter 165. Little Liu Yi. Yundong went to the Liu residence. Because of Liu Yi's instructions, she was not stopped when she entered. Liu Yi was very happy to see her. He was even happier to see the 20 catties of white sugar. He took it and was about to leave. Yundong could not take it anymore and kicked him. Didn't we agree on 10 days? It's not time yet. But isn't it already 20 catties? Liu Yi felt wronged. If he counted enough catties, he could throw it at Tao Xing's face. Yundong secretly suppressed the anger in her heart. So have you forgotten the second point I mentioned last time? The second point? Liu Yi thought for a while and finally remembered. Backer. Yes. Yundong glared at him fiercely. I'm going to look for Wenzheng now to test his intentions. Your brother hasn't gone to school yet, right? Find me a clean servant's clothes. Why do you want the servant's clothes? To send your brother to school. She had specially woken up early in the morning and waited for the city gate to open before coming over. Did he think she had nothing better to do? Seeing that she looked like she wanted to eat him up, Liu Yi hurriedly went to look for Luan. Go. Find a new set of clothes. Luan quickly took out a set of clothes. They were a little big. Fortunately, the weather was cold now. Yundong could just put them on outside. Then, Liu Yi went to his younger brother's courtyard and told his younger brother's servant that he would personally send him to school today. In the end, as soon as he led his brother Liu Yi to the door, he handed him over to Yundong. This was the first time Yundong had seen Liu Yi's younger brother. He looked to be about the same age as Yunshu, but his tense face and hands behind his back made him look like a little adult. Liu Yi was not surprised to see Yundong. On the way here, his brother had said that a friend of his would send him there today. It seemed that this was the person. Liu Yi nodded at her and pointed at the book box at the side. Take it and let's go. Then, he got the coachman to carry him into the carriage. Yundong looked at the book box and could not help but laugh. She followed him into the car. You're nothing like your brother. Liu Yi nodded and said with a serious expression, "Father said that eldest brother can't be put in an important position. I have a huge responsibility and will support the entire Liu mansion in the future." Yundong wanted to laugh but did not dare to. However, Liu Yi continued, "Since you're my brother's friend, I hope you can persuade my brother to read and write more often in the future and not take him to places he shouldn't go." Yundong asked, "What do you mean by places he shouldn't go?" Liu Yi thought for a long time but couldn't think of anything. His little face turned red. How could he know what was a place he shouldn't go? It was just that when his parents said so, he learned it. But when he saw Yundong's curious expression, he could only straighten his neck and say in a childish voice, "You know what it is." Then, he changed the topic and urged the coachman to set off quickly. Yundong felt that this child was quite interesting. If Yunshu became his classmate in the future, it would definitely be interesting. Thinking of this, she was looking forward to seeing Wenzheng. However, what she did not expect was that just as she set off, another carriage came from outside the Liu residence. As soon as the carriage stopped, a young man got out. In the Liu residence, Old Master Liu had just heard that a girl had entered the residence to look for his son. He wanted to ask Liu Wei to come over and clarify things, but he suddenly heard the butler say that Wenzheng had come. He immediately ignored his son and went forward. Unexpectedly, when Wenzheng saw him, he frowned slightly and said, "How did this matter blow up so much? Now that the entire county knows that your Liu family can produce white sugar, why didn't you suppress this matter?" Chapter 166. The Liu family's backer suppress it? Speaking of this, Old Master Liu was so angry that he gritted his teeth. "It's all that prodigal son's fault. I wanted to suppress it, but just as I spoke to Old Master Tao, Liu Wei had already made a bet with Tao Xing in front of everyone in the city. What else can I say?" Wenzheng did not expect Liu Wei to be so unreliable. This matter had blown up too much. If it was not contained, someone would make a big deal out of it. Wenzheng had some friendship with the Liu family. Old Master Liu was a concubine's son of his uncle's family. When he was young, he was forced to leave home. He happened to meet the current emperor, who was only the sixth prince at that time. Coincidentally, he became the sixth prince's subordinate. Later, he had been secretly helping the sixth prince. Old Master Liu and his cousin had a good relationship when they were young. After the sixth prince became the crown prince, the Liu family's status naturally rose. However, the late emperor was still alive at that time, so he couldn't show it openly. The Liu family was also instructed to keep a low profile and stay in Fengkai County as an ordinary merchant. Back then, Wenzheng had almost been killed in the imperial court. It was this uncle of the Liu family who had saved him and connected him to the crown prince at that time. He listened to the crown prince and temporarily retired from the capital. Later, he traveled all over the rivers and mountains and finally settled down in Fengkai County. It was also the suggestion of the Liu family's uncle, and he received Old Master Liu's help. Now that the late emperor had passed away and the new emperor had ascended the throne, Uncle Liu could slowly surface from behind and appear in front of others. Now that he was in the midst of preparations, it was time to keep a low profile. However, there was the matter of making sugar. It would have been fine if it was just a commotion in the county. The problem now was that even the prefectural city knew about this. Early this morning, Prefecture Magistrate Dai had sent someone here to tell him that someone might make a big deal out of this. Wenzheng naturally did not want anything to happen to the Liu family, so he looked for Old Master Liu. Old Master Liu was so worried that his hair was going bald. "I've gotten someone to investigate. It seems that a country girl has spread the news that she has the ability. I don't know what's wrong with Liu Wei. He even believed such words. Previously, he was provoked by Tao Xing to bet on 2 shops. It's fine. Our family can afford the loss. Just treat it as a lesson." Who knew that 2 days ago, he went to that Yongfu village and came back crazy. He went to teach his son a lesson, but this brat didn't let him interfere. He didn't even tell him what was going on and even found him annoying. He was simply an unfilial son. Indeed, it was a wise move for him to nurture his youngest son, Liu Yi. Actually, he had originally planned to get someone to go to Yongfu village today to find that woman. Previously, when he heard that a woman came to look for Liu Wei, Old Master Liu guessed that it was most likely her. Wenzheng also found it strange. He had seen Liu Yi before. Although he didn't like to study and wasn't smart, he wouldn't be so unreliable in the face of important matters. Where is he? I'll go see him. Wenzheng was thoughtful and felt that Liu Yi was a little strange. To blindly believe a woman's words. Could it be that he had fallen into a relationship that he could not extricate himself from? Old Master Liu nodded repeatedly. All right, follow me. He was also about to look for him. The two of them hurried towards Liu Yi's courtyard. Unexpectedly, as soon as they stepped into the courtyard, they heard Liu Yi laughing loudly. That voice frightened Old Master Liu. Just as he was infuriated, he heard Liu Yi start singing. His singing was awful. Not only was he tone deaf, but he was also wailing like a ghost. Old Master Liu felt extremely ashamed. Chapter 167. School entrance. Wenzheng could not help but twitch his lips. He looked at Old Master Liu. Don't tell me he's lost his mind? Old Master Liu's expression changed and he hurriedly rushed in. As soon as Liu Yi turned around while singing, he saw Old Master Liu and Wenzheng coming in. His singing had just reached a high-pitched stage, but at this moment, it stopped abruptly, as if a duck was being strangled. The expression on his face froze, and his mouth opened wide, looking especially ferocious. Old Master Liu felt his heart ache and quickly came over to help him sit down. Why did you suddenly go crazy? I heard that a girl came to look for you previously. Did she do something? Father will send someone to capture her now. Liu Yi blinked and finally came back to his senses. He hurriedly reached out to hold his father's hand and shouted, Wait. Father, what crazy illness are you talking about? I'm not crazy. I'm fine. I'm just happy. It sounded normal. Old Master Liu frowned. If you're happy, why are you shouting? Hee, father, you don't know why I'm happy. Let me tell you No, I can't say it yet. In short, I'll be able to help father earn 5 shops soon. At that time, father, you can't say that I'm a wastrel and unfilial son anymore. I'm also very considerate of the Liu family. Old Master Liu snorted. Forget it. I'll be grateful if you don't lose 5 shops. Sit properly. Your brother Qin is looking for you. Father, you really look down on me. Liu Yi pursed his lips. Then, he suddenly looked at Wenzheng and stood up. Brother Qin, why are you here? Gu Yundong had just gone to school to look for Wenzheng when Wenzheng appeared at his house? Wasn't she missing out? Liu Yi hurriedly urged Wenzheng, Brother Qin, hurry back to school. Old Master Liu was so angry that he almost fell backward. He really should throw his son away. He slapped his son's back. What are you talking about? Your big brother Qin came to see you. Don't be ungrateful. No, father, Liu Yi wanted to explain, but he didn't know how to start. On the other hand, Wenzheng still remembered the purpose of his trip and said, Liu Yi, the matter of your bet with the Tao family has blown up too much. It's better to resolve this matter as soon as possible. I have an idea on my side. I can turn this big matter into a small one. I just want you to suffer a little. Are you willing? I'm not. He was about to slap his enemy in the face. Why should he be wronged? Wenzheng was stunned and felt a headache coming on. Do you know how serious the consequences of this matter are? When the time limit for your bet is up and you can't take out the white sugar you mentioned, the Liu family might lose more than 5 shops. You might even lose the entire Liu family. I know, but Liu Yi's heart was itching. He even wanted to put the white sugar under Wenzheng's nose and tell him that he had it. But he could not. If he ruined Gu Yundong's plans, she would definitely skin him alive. Liu Yi couldn't help but shudder. He couldn't care less and reached out to push Wenzheng out. Brother Qin, go back to school first. When you go back you'll know everything. Really, I beg you to go back quickly. If there's no result when you go back, come and look for me in the afternoon. I'll do whatever you say. Wenzheng was stunned. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Liu Yi for a moment before finally nodding. Okay. He bade farewell to Old Master Liu and turned around to go home. Liu Yi heaved a sigh of relief. Gu Yundong would probably thank him. Yes. At this moment, Gu Yundong had already brought Liu Yi to the school. As soon as they got off the carriage, they saw many people surrounding the school gate. Chapter 168. Violent Gu Yundong asked Liu Yi to stand where he was, instructed the coachman to keep an eye on him, and squeezed into the crowd. The people outside were all people who lived nearby. All of them looked at the two parties who were confronting each other inside. One of them stood at the entrance of the school. There were 4 people. One was a young woman with a maidservant beside her. She was carrying a young girl in her arms. The last one was the gatekeeper that Gu Yundong had seen before. Standing opposite them was a middle-aged man who looked a little old. He was wearing a neat long robe and a square scarf. He looked like a scholar. There were 3 youths and 2 children standing beside him. It was obvious that they were coming aggressively. Gu Yundong frowned and asked the people around her what had happened. The onlookers at the side kindly explained to her, "These people are the teachers and students of our county's Dongyi Academy. I heard that yesterday, a few students of Dongyi Academy were discussing some knowledge loudly in the tea house. In the end, Master Qin was also in the tea house with his wife and daughter. When he heard the wrong knowledge they said, he pointed it out and corrected them. In the end today, the teachers of their academy brought people up to argue that what Master Qin said was wrong." Gu Yundong had asked around before and knew that Dongyi Academy was the largest academy in Fengkai County other than the county school. The dean of the academy was a high scholar, and 5 of the students had elementary scholar titles. Compared to it, Qin Wenzheng school was much weaker. Not to mention that it had only been open for a year or 2. Even the students he had taken in were all children, and there were only a dozen of them. Not to mention elementary scholar, there was not even a preparation scholar. Moreover, Qin Wenzheng was really low-key. Only people like the Liu family, the Peng family and the county magistrate knew his identity. For example, more than half of the families of the students in his school had only sent their children over when they heard that there was a school here. The teacher was kind and knowledgeable and the tuition was affordable. In Dongyi Academy, only the dean who was the high scholar knew who he was. However, this high scholar was already on the way to the capital for the examination because the new emperor had ascended the throne. Today, the person who had brought a few students to look for Qin Wenzheng was just an ordinary teacher. Madame Gu, who was at the door, was also annoyed by these people, but she still said patiently, "My husband is not at home. If you have something to ask him, come another day." The teacher standing in front sneered when he heard this. "Not at home. I'm afraid he knows that he said something wrong yesterday and doesn't dare to come out, right? To think that he's still a teacher who teaches and educates people. He doesn't have literature in his heart, but he has to pretend to be knowledgeable. A person like him doesn't deserve to be a scholar at all. Teaching and educating people is misleading them. I think if he doesn't become a teacher, there's no need to open a school." Madame Guess' expression changed, but the students behind the master also echoed. Their words were each sharper than the other, and the onlookers began to whisper. This was clearly ruining her husband's reputation. Madame Gu couldn't help but take a step forward. "My husband doesn't have literature in his heart? What a joke. Why don't you go back and ask the dean of your academy if my husband is knowledgeable? Who doesn't know that our dean is not at the academy but has left for the capital for the examination? Don't talk about other stuff. We don't talk to a woman like you. Call Master Qin out. Don't hide inside and not make a sound." As the teacher spoke, he approached. Madame Gu could not help but take a small step back. Chapter 169. You are blind. However, she had forgotten that there was a staircase behind her. She lost her balance and flipped backward. The maidservant behind her screamed, "Madam, be careful." She wanted to help her, but she was still carrying the young lady in her hand. Coincidentally, there was the gatekeeper blocking the way in front. It was too far away and she could not make it in time. Just as Madame Gu was about to fall to the ground, a figure suddenly rushed out from the side. He suddenly held Madame Guess' waist and pulled her back. Madame Gu gasped in shock and exhaled twice. She said in shock, "Thank you." If this guy hadn't supported her, she would have embarrassed herself in front of so many people today. As soon as she finished speaking, she realized that there was silence around her. No one made a sound. Stunned, Madame Gu looked up and saw everyone looking at her waist. She lowered her head slightly and saw the hand that was still on her waist. She looked up along the finger and saw a delicate face. Madame Gu frowned slightly. This face, before she could take a closer look, a few sneers suddenly came from Dongi Academy. The teacher blew his beard and glared at him. In public, it's inappropriate for a married woman to hug a servant. It's insulting to the refined. It's simply insulting to the refined. The student beside him was also laughing. No wonder that Master Qin spouted nonsense. He can't even manage his family well. How can he have the mood to study? That's right. Look, they're still hugging each other and can't bear to part. Children, don't look. Be careful of getting needle marks. One of the students even deliberately covered the eyes of the two children beside him and said loudly. The onlookers also discussed softly. This Madame Gu looks like a well-educated person. I usually don't even dare to speak loudly when I see her. I feel that she's not the same as us. But now, Madame Gu heard these words and her face instantly turned red. Gu Yundong's face was also dark. She straightened Madame Guest's body slightly and said in a low voice, Madam, stand properly. Thank you. Madame Gu lowered her head slightly and stood up. However, in the next moment, her body tilted again, and a painful expression appeared on her face. Gu Yundong subconsciously reached out to hold her waist again. What's wrong? She spoke softly, and Madame Gu heard it clearly. It was a girl. Madame Gu secretly heaved a sigh of relief, but the sharp pain in her foot made her frown. I think my ankle was sprained. Gu Yundong immediately turned around and called out to the dumbfounded maidservant, Aren't you coming over? The maidservant suddenly came back to her senses, and her face turned pale. She hurriedly put down the little girl who was struggling to call her mother, and came up to grab Madame Guest's hand. Madam, how are you? Mother, how are you? Madame Gu shook her head and smiled at Gu Yundong. Thank you so much. Yo, you're still deep in love here. You've even developed feelings for each other after hugging for a long time? Mrs. Qin, I think your husband is useless. Look, he's still hiding inside and not coming out. Why don't you just marry this servant? Therefore, the words of a scholar who had read books were even worse when he did not have any grace. Gu Yundong let go of Madame Guest's hand and looked at the people from Dongi Academy. The teacher laughed disdainfully. Why? You did such an ugly thing in front of everyone and you're not letting anyone talk about it? F***ck, a bunch of ducks. Are you blind? Gu Yundong suddenly reached out and removed the hat on her head. Open your eyes and take a good look. I'm a woman, a woman. Chapter 170. Argument. Her silky long hair fell to the side, and her crisp voice exploded. The scene was deathly silent. Everyone seemed to have their acupoints pressed as they stared at her without moving. After a while, the master of Dongi Academy suddenly came back to his senses. He shook his head fiercely and pointed at Gu Yundong. You're a woman? Why? Not only are you blind, but your eyeballs are also gone, right? The student behind the master couldn't help but exclaim, If she's a woman, why is she disguised as a man? Because I'm happy to. It's none of your business. Gu Yundong glanced at him and snorted. The master was so angry that he almost fell backward. His entire face was red with anger. How unbecoming. It's simply unbecoming. Not only is she disguised as a man, but she also curses. It's simply insulting to the refined. Refined my ass. Gu Yundong took 2 steps forward and approached the teacher. She sneered. You're a teacher of Dongi Academy. Instead of educating people, you brought students to find trouble with us. Why don't you say that it's insulting? Why don't you say that it's insulting to be polite when you say that you don't want to lower yourself to the level of a woman while saying evil words in front of other people's children? This madam said that her husband is not at home, but you didn't believe her. Why do you have to cause a commotion on the streets and block traffic to affect others? Why don't you say that it's insulting? Gu Yundong kept approaching. Her voice was crisp and sharp, making the teacher and the students unable to resist. They could only stare and retreat. You say that you're a scholar, and yet you caused Mrs. Qin to almost fall, but you didn't even apologize. Instead, you pointed at me and criticized me for helping her. Have you read all your books? A person like you who doesn't respect others and doesn't know etiquette isn't called a scholar. You should be called a refined scumbag. You! The master could not even speak after being scolded. What did I say? Did I say something wrong? Even I know that when scholars visit, they should first send a visitation card and arrange a time and place before sitting down to talk about the past and the present. They should not bring a few students to the door of someone's house aggressively and talk nonsense to the old, weak, women and children. What's the difference between you and a street shrew? This time, not only the teacher, but even the students' faces flashed with embarrassment and hatred. Yundong raised her chin slightly and sneered. With your manners and upbringing, you've disgraced the Dongi Academy and the scholars. You. A student flew into a rage out of humiliation. After holding it in for a long time, he suddenly said, "Nonsense." Indeed, only women and villains are difficult to take care of. The master nodded vigorously. You're right. The ancients were right. Only women and villains are difficult to take care of. Yundong suddenly scolded, "Hey, you unfilial sons!" The few of them were stunned and did not understand. How are we unfilial? Your mothers aren't women? You actually said that she's difficult to raise. You don't want to support her, right? If this isn't unfilial, what is? The few of them blushed. The teacher's heart ached. He pointed at Yundong. You're being unreasonable. I'll speak the truth. If you can't win, shut your mouth. What a disgrace. Yundong slapped his hand away. The master's face gradually contorted. Suddenly, he felt his vision turn black and his entire body fell backward. Master. The three students were shocked. They hurriedly supported him and glared at Yundong before running away. Chapter 171. Becoming famous in one battle. Yundong scoffed. If you have the ability, come and find trouble with me. If you have the ability, don't pretend to be unconscious, coward. She turned around and swept her gaze across the crowd. Just now, these people were still making sarcastic remarks and pointing fingers at Madame Gu. But now, they looked at her and did not dare to say a word. Who would dare to come out? Didn't they see that she was so sharp-tongued that even a scholar fainted from her scolding? Is there anything else? Yundong asked. Everyone immediately shook their heads like rattledrums and waved their hands to deny it. No. Miss, what you said just now makes sense. It's those people. They don't have any rules. Ah, I remember that there's still porridge cooking at home. I have to leave quickly. I have to go back and wash my clothes too. It's rare for the sun to come out. As the voices fell, the crowded street instantly dispersed. Everyone fled quickly, as if someone was chasing them from behind. As soon as they left, they revealed Liu Yi and the coachman standing not far away. Yundong walked over. Liu Yi pursed his lips and looked serious, but his cheeks were red, as if he was a little agitated. Although he was standing outside the crowd and could not see what was happening inside, he could hear voices. Coupled with what the coachman had told him, Liu Yi roughly understood. He still had his hands behind his back as he sized up Yundong for a long time. Yes, she was indeed a woman, and she was quite good-looking. Liu Yi expressed his satisfaction. You helped my master's wife. You're not bad. You can be my brother's friend. After saying that, he strode towards the entrance of the academy. He first greeted Madame Gu, then brought Madame Guest's daughter, Xian'er, inside. Madame Gu stood there and waited for her. She only came over when she saw her carrying a small basket from the carriage. Yundong held Madame Guest's other side with her free hand and entered the school with the maidservant. Yes, she came in just like that. Madame Gu was very grateful to her. After she sat down in the room, she thanked her again. Thank you so much for today. If it weren't for you, I might have been injured and those people wouldn't have left so easily. Yundong put the basket aside and said, I thought my words were too sharp and rude just now, and Madame won't like me. Madame Gu was stunned for a moment before she laughed. What are you talking about? You were trying to help me. Am I such an ungrateful person? Besides, those people from Dongi Academy are indeed detestable. I also want to scold them fiercely. But am not as eloquent as you. Yundong smiled. Wenzheng's wife was easy to talk to. Madame Gu had sprained her ankle. Fortunately, it was not very serious. There were not many servants in the Qin family. Other than the gatekeeper, there was also the butler, Madame Guest's maidservant, Qin Wenzheng's servant, and an old woman at the stove. The servant followed Qin Wenzheng to the Liu residence. The butler was also instructed to go out to do something. The old woman went to the market to buy groceries, which resulted in only Madame Gu and few people in the house. Now that the old woman was back, she knew how to take care of injuries. She took the medicinal wine and rubbed the ankle hard. Madame Gu changed her clothes and came out of the inner room to talk to Gu Yundong. I haven't asked for your name. Why did you dress up as a servant and follow the young master of the Liu family here? What's the matter? Gu Yundong nodded. My name is Gu Yundong. I'm indeed here for something today. Miss Gu, please speak. I want to. She had just started when hurried footsteps came from outside. Madam, how are you? Chapter 172. My brother Yunshu is deeply virtuous. Before Gu Yundong could regain his senses, she saw a figure rush in like a gust of wind. He ran to Madame Guest's side and squatted down to look at her feet. Madame Gu pushed him anxiously. Don't. There's someone here. I'm fine. I've already applied the medicine. Qin Wenzheng had indeed smelled the medicinal wine. Seeing that Madame Gu was not injured, he heaved a sigh of relief. As soon as he returned, he heard from the gatekeeper that the students of the headmaster of Dongyi Academy had come to cause trouble. He was extremely anxious and immediately ran in. When he heard Madame Guest's words, he stood up and turned to look at Gu Yundong. I heard from Uncle Quan that you saved my wife. Thank you, Mississippi. You're welcome. Gu Yundong smiled. She had finally met the legendary Qin Wenzheng. He was a little more refined than she had imagined. Judging from how nervous he was about his wife just now, he should be someone who valued relationships. Qin Wenzheng thought quickly. Not only did Uncle Quan, the gatekeeper, say that Dongyi Academy had come to cause trouble, but he also said that Madame had sprained her ankle. He also said that the girl who helped them was dressed as a servant of the Liu family to send Liu Yi to school. Coupled with what happened in the Liu family, he quickly thought of Gu Yundong's identity. Therefore, after Qin Wenzheng sat down, he asked, Miss Gu, are you from Yongfu village and know the eldest young master of the Liu family? Yes. Gu Yundong nodded. Qin Wenzheng tapped his fingers on the table. Then, is there something you need from me today? After a pause, he added, You saved my wife. As long as I can help, I want refuse. She had deliberately disguised herself as a servant to come to the door, and knew the eldest young master of the Liu family. She must have known his identity. Gu Yundong's expression turned serious. Since Master Qin has said so, I won't stand on ceremony. I have a 5-year-old brother who's really adorable, understanding, and righteous. He's sensible, lively, cheerful and smart. Miss, I know that your brother is a very, very good child. You can just get to the point. Qin Wenzheng was slightly sweating. He had never seen anyone praise their child so much. Shouldn't she be a little humble? Oh. Gu Yundong coughed lightly. It's like this. I hope Master Qin can take my brother Yunshu as a student and teach him how to read and write. That's it. Gu Yundong nodded seriously. I heard from young Master Liu that Teacher Qin is knowledgeable. I saw that the Liu family sent their children here to school. I think Teacher Qin must be good. Qin Wenzheng took a sip of tea. Well, at least Liu Wei had some knowledge. I've always taken in students based on their aptitude and character. If they catch my eye, no matter if they're rich or poor, they'll still be my students. I haven't seen your brother yet. Miss, why don't you bring him over to take a look? Gu Yundong smiled. No exceptions? Didn't the Liu family send Liu Yi here because of favors? Although she trusted her brother's qualifications and character. Madame Gu reached out and nudged Qin Wenzheng. The corners of Qin Wenzheng's mouth twitched, and he coughed lightly. That's true. Miss helped my family a lot today, so I can naturally relax my requirements. As for how relaxed, Sai, who asked him to love his wife. That was a 5-year-old child. Whether he was stupid or had a bad character, he could more or less turn things around if he put in more effort. Gu Yundong was relieved to hear that. Apart from that, I have something else to discuss with Master Qin. Chapter 173. As you see, this is white sugar. Wenzheng frowned slightly. Hey. Don't push your luck. He had a temper too. Yundong looked to the side and said, I want to talk to Mr. Qin alone about this. Wenzheng's frown deepened. However, he remembered that he also wanted to ask this girl if the Liu family's bet had anything to do with her, so he agreed. He asked the maidservant to bring his daughter out, and also asked the manservant who was originally standing at the door to leave. However, he did not let Madame go leave. I don't have anything to hide from Madame. If you have something to say, just say it. Coincidentally, I have something to ask you. Yundong had no objections. Instead, she felt that such a respectful and trusting couple was more reassuring. Still, Master Qin, do you have something to ask me? This was a little strange. Then you can ask first. It was also a good opportunity to get to know Wenzheng better. After all, she still needed to be cautious about what she was going to say next. Wenzheng did not decline. He was originally quite anxious. Miss Gu is from Yongfu village and is friends with the eldest young master of the Liu family. You should know about the bet between him and the Tao family, right? I want to know if this matter is related to Miss? So it was this. She nodded. It does concern me. Wenzheng's expression suddenly became serious. In that case, Miss is really the woman who claimed to make white sugar and made young Master Liu believe her without a doubt? There shouldn't be anyone else. Wenzheng could not help but raise his voice slightly. Miss, do you know that this matter has already reached the prefectural city? If we don't control it, the consequences will be unimaginable. Madame Gu tugged at his sleeve worriedly. Wenzheng exhaled slightly and continued, I went to the Liu family today and met the eldest young master of the Liu family. I originally wanted to persuade him to reduce the matter, but he refused to listen to my advice. He seemed to trust Miss Gu very much, but he refused to tell me the reason when I asked him. Miss Gu, can you tell me the reason? The reason is very simple. Young Master Liu believes that I can make white sugar. Master Qin, do you believe it? Wenzheng suddenly wanted to laugh. Miss Gu, this is the first time we've met. Even now, I still don't know your name, family background, and character. How can I believe that you have such ability? She made a lot of sense. Yundong nodded and bent down to pick up the basket that had been placed on the table. Then, she pulled off the cloth covering it and revealed a ceramic jar. Then will you believe that I have the ability to do so after seeing this? Wenzheng was stunned. He looked at the jar and then exchanged glances with Madame Gu. Master, can you open it and take a look? Yundong made an inviting gesture. Wenzheng paused for a moment. With a tense expression, he opened the lid and peeked out. The things inside were fine and white, as if they were salt, but also not. This is... You can try it. This time, Yundong was more careful and prepared a small spoon. After all, the teacher was a scholar. He could not just swoop with his hand like Liu Wei. Wenzheng suspiciously picked up a small spoon and scooped a little. After hesitating for a moment, seeing that Madame Gu was about to eat it herself, he brought it to his mouth and took a shallow sip. The next moment, his pupils constricted and he suddenly stood up from his chair. Sweet, this is... Yundong also stood up. As you can see, this is white sugar. Do you believe that I have the ability now? Wenzheng's entire body shook, and his eyes suddenly became bright. Chapter 174. Second suggestion. Yundong's hair stood on end from his gaze. She had the illusion that she was shining. She calmed herself down and said, Master? Wenzheng sat down again and stuffed the spoon in his hand into his mouth. He ate the spoonful of sugar and closed his eyes. As if he was savoring the aftertaste, he carefully pursed his lips. Yundong, can you not make it sound like you're doing drugs? When Wenzheng opened his eyes again, he was much calmer, but his eyes were still burning with ecstasy. He took a deep breath. Lady Gu, did you really make this? Yes. Good. You've made a huge contribution to our country. Contribution to the country? No. Yundong smiled. Master, don't flatter me. I'm just an ordinary farm girl. I'm selling this sugar for money. I can't bear such a heavy burden. Mr. Qin's mouth twitched. Why wasn't she excited at all? But Miss Gu, you know that if you offer the formula to the imperial court, what you get will be far more important than silver. Gu Yundong nodded. Perhaps you're right. I can get fame, praise, a reward, and even be recorded in history books. Oh, it would probably be written that she was from the Gu family of Fengkai County, and her name would not even be mentioned. Qin Wenzheng nodded. Wasn't that very clear? Isn't that good? At least Qin Wenzheng wanted such a reputation. Gu Yundong said, of course it's good, but what about after the flowers and applause? I'm still Gu Yundong from Yongfu village. My formula is given to the imperial court, so I can't use it. I even have to buy it if I need it. In the future, she would also be in the jam and candy business. These needed a large amount of white sugar, but the price of white sugar in the grocery store was simply ruthless. So what if the emperor got to know her because of this? He would forget about her in less than a month. Without her source of income, her life was probably worse than before. Just like the current Olympic champions. They were so exciting and loved when they brought glory to their country. However, after they retired, how many of these athletes became poor? After the applause, only she could plan for herself. Gu Yundong admitted that she was a selfish person and not that noble. Qin Wenzheng frowned. That was not wrong. However, he said, then why did you come to see me today? After the sugar is released, I'm afraid many people will covet it. Therefore, I want to find a reliable and capable person to cooperate with. Master Qin is not an ordinary teacher. Let's cooperate and split the profits. How about that? Qin Wenzheng was stunned. This girl actually had such an idea. But he shook his head slightly and frowned. Although I'm not a rich person, I'm not short of money. Besides, this white sugar is a hot potato to me. He wanted this share, but if the emperor found out, he would definitely not let him off. This was white sugar. It was unique. It was not like he was cooperating with others to open a restaurant or shop. It was easy to get a share of the profits from those, but it was not easy to get them from white sugar. Gu Yundong was not surprised by his rejection. She smiled and said, Master Qin, why don't you listen to my second suggestion? There's more? Qin Wenzheng could not help but sit up straight. Speak. Chapter 175. Qin Wenzheng is unromantic. Gu Yundong pointed at the white sugar. The formula for the white sugar can be presented to the imperial court. Qin Wenzheng's eyes lit up, but she continued, but there are conditions. What conditions? The imperial court will allow me to privately make and sell it. Damn it, she was clearly the one who made it. She still had to obtain the imperial court's permission to make deals. It was so annoying. But Gu Yundong knew that it was impossible for her to keep the technique of extracting white sugar in her hands. This thing was not like recipe or embroidery skills. This person did not have it, but that person did. They could hide it as an inheritance and let the future generations inherit the skills. White sugar was related to the livelihood of the people. In the future, it would have to enter thousands of families. It was like salt. She was just a small farmer girl. How could she dare to monopolize it? She would be killed in minutes. However, she could let the imperial court monopolize it. Seeing that Qin Wenzheng was silent, Gu Yundong continued, Master Qin, let's face the reality. If you want me to offer the formula, this is the only condition. Of course, the imperial court can also disagree. You can also coerce and tempt me, but nobody wants to see the bad consequences. Although I want to do business in private, don't worry. My quantity won't be huge. Besides, what I want to do the most isn't the white sugar business. At this point, she lowered her voice slightly. However, the imperial court can refine it in large quantities. Master Qin, the treasury is empty now, right? Don't look at me like that. To say something disrespectful, we all know what kind of person the late emperor was. Moreover, as soon as the current emperor ascended the throne, he immediately sent a large sum of disaster relief silver to Yongning Prefecture. Just think about how much silver there is in the treasury. Qin Wenzheng's expression turned grave. Gu Yundong lowered her voice even more. But this white sugar can help the emperor earn a lot of money. White sugar looks fair, but there's not much of it. I heard that most of the nobles in the capital like to compare. If they know that there's such a thing, wouldn't they think of ways to buy it? But white sugar is in the hands of the court. Isn't the price just how much the emperor wants? Besides, white sugar can also be exported to our neighboring countries. Not only can it showcase our country's advanced technology, but it can also earn their money, right? Wenzheng followed her train of thought. The more he thought about it, the more feasible it seemed. Chapter 176. Family goes to Yongfu village. Wenzheng quickly finished writing the letter and got someone to send the jar of white sugar to the capital. After that, he returned and chatted with Gu Yundong for a long time. Madame Gu instructed the servants to prepare lunch and let Gu Yundong eat at the Qin residence before leaving. As soon as she left, Madame Gu asked Wenzheng worriedly, "Will this matter work?" Wenzheng looked at the distant carriage and reached out to hold Madame Gu's hand. He said in a low voice, "The emperor is a monarch who cherishes talent." Madame Gu understood that it was most likely possible. If that's the case, Miss Gu can privately manufacture and sell white sugar? That will attract a lot of attention. It won't be difficult for the people in the capital to find out. Speaking of which, even if Lady Gu gave the entire formula to the imperial court and did not care about it, those who wanted to find out would still be able to find out that she was the inventor. Don't worry. I've been in Fengkai County for a few years. Now that the county magistrate is under the Dai Prefecture magistrate, those people will have to ask for my permission if they want to interfere. Wenzheng smiled. I'm afraid I'll be busy from now on. My wife, please bear with me. You're going to be busy. Didn't you just promise Miss Gu to accept her brother as a student? There's no hurry. At the very least, we have to wait for news from the capital before we have the mood. Wenzheng's judgment was correct. 5 days later, a letter came from the capital and was sent to the Qin residence overnight. It was a thick letter, which showed how important it was and how much the emperor valued it. Wenzheng opened the letter and smiled. The next morning, he brought Madame Gu and his daughter, Xian'er, to Yongfu village. When the carriage entered Yongfu village, the villagers were no longer as curious as Gu Yundong's first visit. After all, ever since the Gu family bought a carriage and the Liu family's young master often came over, the carriage was no longer rare. However, there were still children following behind the carriage. This was the first time Xian'er had come to such a place. Seeing that the children were different from the children from her school, she was slightly excited and wanted to get out of the carriage, but she was stopped by Madame Gu. This young lady was not a quiet person. If she really wanted to play with children of the same age, she would definitely go crazy. Her mother would not be able to pull her back. Wenzheng lifted the curtain and asked the child outside, "May I ask how to get to Gu Yundong's house?" At first, he was afraid that these children did not know. After all, he did not know Gu Yundong's father's name. Unexpectedly, the children nodded in unison. The Gu family? Other families might be unknown, but who did not know the Gu family? The most imposing green brick-tiled house was her house. It was very impressive. One of the children immediately shouted in a certain direction, "Yunshu, Yunshu, someone is looking for your family. Is it a relative of yours?" The child was a little envious. Yunshu's family was rich, and so were her relatives. Looking at the big carriage, they were even richer than her family. Wenzheng followed the child's gaze and saw a child standing far away, wiping a little girl's hands with a handkerchief. Perhaps because he did not hear the child's cry, Gu Yunshu did not turn around. The child wanted to call out again, but Wenzheng waved his hand, got off the carriage, and walked over. Yunshu? Wasn't this the name of the younger brother that Gu Yundong had mentioned before? Wenzheng slowly walked behind him and heard the young and patient little voice. Chapter 177. Heart of Love for Talents. Let's see if you still dare to run so fast. Fortunately, your clothes are thick and you didn't fall too hard. If you fall and hurt yourself, won't you cry? Don't run next time, understand? If you want to find me, just call me loudly. Will I not wait for you? Gu Yunshu carefully wiped her palm with a handkerchief. She had probably hit a small stone and it was a little red. Fortunately, her skin was not broken. The little girl's eyes were red, but she shook her head hard. "I'm not running anymore. Give me 2 puffs." As she spoke, she stretched out her small hand. Yunshu seriously blew on it twice. Then, the little girl smiled in satisfaction. "All right, it doesn't hurt anymore. Let's go home and change your clothes." Yunshu held her small hand. Unexpectedly, just as he turned around, he saw Wenzheng standing behind him. Yunshu blinked. "What can I do for you?" Wenzheng quietly listened to the siblings' conversation, and his impression of this child improved a lot. Such a young child usually ran out to play with his friends. It was really rare for him to take care of his younger sister so carefully without any impatience. Moreover, this child was good-looking and polite. He heard from Yundong that he had studied and knew how to read. It seemed that he had not studied for nothing. "I'm looking for your eldest sister, Yundong. I'm from the county. My surname is Qin." Wenzheng thought that since Yundong was looking for a teacher for her younger brother, she had at least told him about the teacher. If he introduced himself like this, Yunshu should know who he was. Unexpectedly, he only nodded and asked, "Do you know my eldest sister? Why are you looking for her?" Wenzheng was speechless. The girl had actually never mentioned him to her brother? Wenzheng coughed lightly and calmed himself down before saying, "A few days ago, Miss Gu went to the county city and helped my wife. Today, I specially brought my wife and daughter to visit." Yunshu was happy to hear that. "My elder sister is very good. She's kind, beautiful, and capable. When she sees that your wife is in trouble, she will definitely help her." Yunka nodded. "She's also smart." Wenzheng looked up at the sky and recalled Yundong praising her younger brother with a bunch of idioms that day. It seemed that this was inherited from the family. Siblings did not even have to be humble when praising each other. Yunshu's attitude towards Wenzheng immediately improved. "Then I'll bring you there. Follow me." With that, he held Yunshu's hand and walked forward. They were only at the village entrance now. Their house was at the foot of the mountain, and it was still a little far away. Wenzheng wanted the 2 of them to get into the carriage. Chapter 178. This is a scam. The Gu house was actually so big and imposing? Wenzheng could not link the green brick house in front of him to the Gu family. Didn't they say that Yundong's family had fled from elsewhere? Didn't they say that her father had still gone missing? Moreover, when Yundong had chatted with him previously, she had clearly acted as if she was very short of money, and needed white sugar business. This was a scam, a scam. Her house was even better than his. Looking at the stone road at the door, the neat flower beds around, and the brand new bricks, it was even more luxurious than the landlord's house. When Yundong came out, she saw Madame Gu carrying her daughter down from the carriage. She quickly stepped forward with a smile. "Mrs. Qin, you're here. Come in and sit." Madame Gu greeted her and led her daughter into the house. However, after taking a few steps, she realized that Wenzheng was still standing at the same spot. She could not help but turn around to look. At this moment, Wenzheng looked at Yundong angrily and sneered. "Miss Gu's house is really unexpected." When Madame Gu heard this, she looked over and her eyes lit up. Of course, she had seen green brick houses before. She had even seen more exquisite carvings. However, the house in front of her gave off a very different feeling. It was a little different, but it gave people a warm and comfortable feeling. Yundong instantly understood that Wenzheng was angry out of humiliation. Seeing how sarcastic he was, she immediately sighed. "That's not right. This house of mine has cost me all my savings. Now that I'm penniless, I can't even gather enough money to send my brother to school, so I have to work hard to earn money." Yunshu hurriedly said, "I'm not going to school. You don't have to work too hard. You'll be tired." "No." Wenzheng was the first to object. She then turned to look at Yundong, who shrugged. "Let's talk inside." The group of people entered the house and Yundong poured them some sugar water. It was made with white sugar. Compared to brown sugar, it was as if nothing was added. The water was still transparent and clear. It looked very refreshing, but it tasted sweet in his mouth. Madame Gu let out a comfortable breath and looked at her daughter. She saw that she had already gulped it all down and handed the empty cup to Wenzheng for him to pour another cup. Previously, Wenzheng had sent all the white sugar to the capital. He did not leave any for himself, so seriously speaking, this was the first time he had drunk such sugar water. He could not help but nod to himself. It was indeed not bad. After drinking the sugar water, Wenzheng saw the siblings standing quietly beside Yundong, as if they wanted to embolden her. He could not help but smile. Chapter 179. Let me do it. After the three children left, Wenzheng said, "There's a reply from the capital. The emperor has agreed to your conditions. Moreover, the emperor has also instructed that Lady Gu can create and sell as much as she wants. No one will come looking for trouble with you." Of course, the people here referred to those high-ranking officials and nobles who wanted a share on the surface, including people like the Tao family in the county. However, Yundong still had to pay attention to those despicable people. Wenzheng would try his best to help. This couldn't be helped. Since he wanted to do business, he couldn't avoid these troublesome things. Not to mention Yundong, even if it was someone like the Liu family, there would also be someone secretly causing trouble. They would even plant spies to disrupt the family's business. Yundong knew that he was bringing her good news. She immediately nodded. "Then I'm relieved. Since it's confirmed, do you want to see the process of making sugar?" Of course. Wenzheng was a little excited. He had been looking forward to it for a long time. Yundong brought them to the backyard. The place where sugar was made was in the backyard. Shao Qingyuan was tidying up the sugarcane. When he saw them coming, he washed his hands and walked over. Wenzheng sized him up. Who was this person? What was his relationship with Yundong? He looked tall and mighty, and his eyes were very cold. Just looking at him made people perk up for no reason. Shao Qingyuan had never seen Wenzheng before. When he accompanied Liu Yi to school, he only followed the butler to help bring the roe deers to the kitchen and then went out. However, he knew about Wenzheng. When Yundong returned that day, she did not hide the conversation between him and Wenzheng. Yundong introduced, "This is Shao Qingyuan. He's my sugar business partner." Partner? Yundong nodded. "That's right. Didn't I tell you? In order to build this house, I spent all my money. Look, I can only find someone to partner with. I'm really poor." Wenzheng. "I don't believe you." He stopped dwelling on this matter. After nodding at Shao Qingyuan, he looked at the things in the courtyard. Because it had not been refined in large quantities, there were only 2 sets of tools, and they were a little simple. Wenzheng went forward and touched it. Indeed, he felt a little white sugar and brown sugar. His hand was sticky, but it made him very excited. Quickly refine it for me to see." Wenzheng looked a little impatient. Yundong went to take the apron, but just as she was about to put it on, she was stopped by Shao Qingyuan. He took the apron from Yundong's hands. "I'll do it. I'm very familiar with it anyway. Watch from the side and explain it to Master Qin." Yundong thought about it and nodded. "All right." Wenzheng raised his eyebrows slightly and did not say anything. Shao Qingyuan quickly took the cane juice that he had squeezed previously and placed it in the vat to boil. When it turned into yellowish-black syrup, he poured it into the bucket and condensed it into black sugar. Then, he placed a tile funnel on a vat and plugged the funnel with straw. He poured the black sugar into the funnel and waited for the black sugar to form a block before removing the straw. Then, he poured the black sugar in the funnel with yellow mud water. The black slag flowed from the funnel into the vat below. The black sugar in the funnel turned into white frost. The top layer was about 5 inches and was very white. Wenzheng did not speak from the beginning to the end. He watched everything as Shao Qingyuan refined the white sugar bit by bit, as if she was casting a spell. The originally black and red sugar actually became so fair after this process. His expression became more and more excited. Chapter 180. Yunshu's teacher Shao Qingyuan only stopped after doing all this. Beside him, Wenzheng's breathing could not help but slow down. Good. That's great. He immediately wanted to try it himself. Seeing that it was getting late, Gu Yundong quickly stopped him. Master Qin, have lunch first before you try. Otherwise, everyone will go hungry if you keep working. Qin Wenzheng suddenly came back to his senses and left the backyard reluctantly. Lunch was still at the Zhang family's house. Although the furniture in the new house had been moved in, the house still needed to be exposed to the sun for a few days before it could be lived in. While eating, Qin Wenzheng suddenly remembered that he had to take in a disciple. He took the opportunity to ask Gu Yunshu if he wanted to go to school. Unexpectedly, the little guy shook his head. My family is poor. If you don't charge tuition fees, Independent Illinois go. After spending an entire morning with Qin Anning, he finally knew Qin Wenzheng's identity. Qin Wenzheng almost choked on his own saliva. You're quite reluctant. Unexpectedly, Gu Yunka nodded as well. Our family is poor. Too poor. The others present lowered their heads silently. Perhaps everyone had a different understanding of poverty? Qin Anning tilted her head and glanced at the candy in her hand. Could a child from a poor family casually take out such a good-looking orange-flavored candy to her friend? If she didn't have it, wouldn't her family be even poorer? Qin Wenzheng could only look at Gu Yundong. The latter felt that Yunshu still had to respect the teacher. Besides, Qin Wenzheng had helped her a lot. It was not good to disrespect him too much. Otherwise, what if he flew into a rage out of humiliation? Hence, Gu Yundong wiped her mouth and said solemnly, Yunshu, meet your teacher. Gu Yunshu, who had been struggling just now, put down his chopsticks without another word. He walked to Qin Wenzheng and knelt down with a thud. Then he kowtowed 3 times. Greetings, sir. Qin Wenzheng was speechless. This child's movements were so fast that he did not even have time to react. The others present stopped what they were doing and looked over in a daze. The Zheng family widened their eyes. This was a teacher of the school? The teacher of the school had personally come to the Gu family to take Gu Yunshu in as a student. How smart was he? Zhang Jiao and Zhang Yu looked at Gu Yunshu enviously. It was great that Yunshu could go to school. They had actually learned some words from Gu Yunshu over the past few days. They were already very satisfied. Qin Wenzheng laughed and reached out to help Gu Yunshu up. He patted his shoulder. Good, good. You're a smart child. How about this? I still have something to do these few days. You can report to school in 3 days. Yes. Yunshu nodded vigorously and turned to look at her elder sister. His little face was red. Gu Yundong knew that even though he had always said that his family was poor and he did not need to go to school, he still yearned for it. From now on, study well with Master Qin. Master Qin is knowledgeable. You won't lose out if you follow him. Qin Wenzheng glanced at her. Why did these words sound so awkward? Was it because he was knowledgeable that he would not suffer a loss, or was it because he had a strong backing? Gu Yundong pretended not to notice his gaze. She pulled Gu Yunshu back and asked everyone to continue eating. Unexpectedly, as soon as she turned around, she saw Madame Yang's eyes wide open in shock as tears slowly fell. Gu Yundong was shocked and hurried to her side. Mother, what's wrong? Chapter 181. Madame Yang cries. For some reason, Madame Yang could not help but cry when she saw Gu Yunshu had a teacher. She looked at Gu Yundong blankly. After thinking for a while, she said, Your father will be happy. Gu Yundong was stunned. She slowly sat down beside Madame Yang and wiped her tears with a handkerchief. She said softly, Yes, if father sees that Yunshu can study and has such a powerful teacher, he will definitely be very happy. Madame Yang nodded heavily. Let's find your father. Okay. Gu Yundong did not forget to look for Gu Dajiang, but she had to have money first. She had to settle down at home so that she could have no worries. In ancient times, where there were no communication tools, it took a lot of manpower and time to find someone. Seeing this, Qin Wenzheng couldn't help but ask, Where did you and your father get separated? If you need help, just tell me. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. Yes, Mr. Qin had a lot of connections. She told him the location of Gu Dajiang's disappearance. Finally, she told him, We agreed with father that if anyone got separated, we would meet in Qingyuan Prefecture. However, when we arrived at Qingyuan Prefecture, the city was in chaos. We had no choice but to come to Xuanhe Prefecture. Master Qin, can you help us ask around in Qingyuan Prefecture? Qin Wenzheng thought for a moment before saying, after the chaos in Qingyuan Prefecture, the officials have all changed. The entire prefectural city is undergoing a major renovation. I'm afraid it won't be easy to find your father. However, it'll help. Miss Gu, don't worry. Your father will definitely be safe. Gu Yundong thanked her with a smile. Madame Yang finally calmed down. Then, she ate happily, as if her previous crying did not exist. Gu Yundong shook her head and laughed. After dinner, Qin Wenzheng couldn't wait to try refining the white sugar. It was just a little clumsy. As expected, it was unsuitable for people who studied. His handicraft ability was not good. However, he was very serious and recorded the process one by one. After 2 tries, he finally wiped the sweat off his forehead and brought Madame Gu and Qin'anning back to the county. After he left, Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan began to discuss mass-producing white sugar. It was impossible to rely on just the 2 of them. They had to hire people and find another venue. Gu Yundong could not bear to use her newly built house as a workshop. She also wanted to buy sugarcane and make a few more sets of tools. Shao Qingyuan was silent for a moment before suddenly saying, "Let's buy some people." Gu Yundong was stunned. Buy someone? Well, you don't have to buy too many. 2 or 3 will do. White sugar is extracted from black sugar. It's not a secret to make black sugar. A lot of people know how to make it. We just have to do the last step. Chapter 182. Buying workers. Gu Yundong calculated the time. It was really today. In the afternoon? Where? Luan replied, yes, early in the morning, at Jinxiu restaurant in the city. The Liu family was mainly in the business of restaurants. Jinxiu restaurant was the largest restaurant in Fengkai County. Of course, the Liu family also had various shops under their name. They sold snacks, pastries, and even groceries. All right, I understand. We still have something to do now. We'll go over at noon. Tell your young master to keep a seat for us. Luan hurriedly asked, Miss Gu, what's the matter? Do you need my help? Gu Yundong thought about it. Luan was more familiar with the county. She could save some effort by asking him. She asked, do you know which broker shop in the county has a fair price? Is the broker's reputation good? Luan was stunned. Miss, you want to buy servants? That's right. Miss, you've asked the right person. The Liu family has interacted with a few brokers in the city. The most fair one is the official broker Hulu Alley in the city. There's a Granny Chow among them, and the people she trains are not bad. She has a conscience. She tells the identity and background of the servants clearly. She won't hide it from you. As for the price, it's a little more expensive than those private brokers, but it's worth it. Gu Yundong knew what to do. All right, thank you. I'll go to the brokerage first and come to the restaurant later. Then I'll go and reply to young master. Miss, take your time. If you need anything, feel free to come to the restaurant and look for my young master. Luan drove the carriage away. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan discussed for a while and went straight to Hulu Alley. If there were no suitable ones over there, it would not be too late to take a look at the others. Hulu Alley was very lively. Although it was called an alley, the road was very wide. Their carriage could directly rush to the entrance of the brokerage. When Gu Yundong came down, she immediately said that she was looking for Granny Chow. The people inside knew that this was most likely introduced by an acquaintance and they immediately went to look for her. Granny Chow was in her 40s. When she came out, she did not waste any time. She brought Gu Yundong to the backyard. Then she called everyone out and let Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan take a look first. Gu Yundong's main purpose in buying people was to help refine the white sugar. Furthermore, she would sign a death contract. After looking around, her gaze finally landed on a family with the surname Tong. According to Granny Chow, this family of 6 used to be servants of a large family in the county city. That family had moved away some time ago and could not bring many servants with them, so they sold a portion of them. Chapter 183. Young Master Liu, don't give up. Yundong paid the money and instantly felt that she was poor again. She really could not afford to spend this money. She had to earn more quickly. Shao Qingyuan saw that she was frowning as soon as she left the brokerage shop. He thought for a moment and asked, "Is there no more silver? I'll go up the mountain tomorrow to see if there are any tigers." There was also the roe deer. Last time, she said that she had never eaten a roe deer. It was just that he had been busy recently and could not find the time to go up the mountain. Yundong immediately shook her head. "You have to go deep into the mountains to fight the tigers. It's so cold now. You'll freeze if you stay in the mountains for 2 days. Besides, it's not that easy to fight the tigers. Do you think you can encounter them so easily? It's better not to go. It's too dangerous." Shao Qingyuan smiled. "Okay, I won't go." The two of them got into the carriage. The Tong family was still at the brokerage shop. Yundong asked them to pack their things first. She would pick them up in the afternoon when they returned from Jinxiu restaurant. Jinxiu restaurant was still some distance away. When Yundong and the others arrived, the entire restaurant was surrounded with carriages. According to the waiter, the stable in the restaurant could not accommodate all the horses at all. They could only block the road. There were too many people. Previously, Yundong had only heard that this bet had blown up quite a bit. Now it seemed that it had blown up too much. How much did Liu Wei hate Tao Xing that he wanted the entire county to see him being humiliated? No wonder even Wenzheng had made a move to persuade her to stop this bet. The waiter had received Liu Wei's instructions and brought Yundong and the rest to the best private room on the second floor. After knocking on the door, a weak voice came from inside. "Come in." Yundong and Shao Qingyuan looked at each other. What was going on? The two of them pushed open the door and entered. Unexpectedly, as soon as she entered, she saw Liu Wei hanging his head low and looking dejected. Even his hair was messy, and his clothes were messy too. He looked like he was in pain. "What happened to you?" Yundong asked softly. "Did something happen to the bet? Should she comfort him?" When Liu Wei heard her voice, he suddenly raised his head. His movements were so fierce that he almost twisted his neck. In the next moment, the dejected look on his face disappeared and he exhaled. "So it's you guys." He wiped his hair and crossed his legs. He looked like an arrogant profligate son, completely different from his previous image. "Who did you think we were then?" "I thought that Tao Xing and the others were here to laugh at me in advance, so I deliberately pretended to be defeated and had nothing to live for to make them happy. That way, the happier they are now, the worse they will fall later. Ha ha ha." This person's bad taste was quite strong. Yundong sat at the table and poured himself and Shao Qingyuan a cup of tea. She reached out to open the window. Liu Wei immediately stopped her. "No, no, no. There are so many people downstairs. If everyone sees how confident I am later, it will be boring." Yundong could only retract her hand and ask him, "Is there anything delicious in your restaurant? I'm hungry. Let's eat first. There are still more than 2 hours left." "Yes, I'll get someone to serve the dishes immediately." As he spoke, he opened the door of the private room with messy hair and shouted to the waiter outside, "Serve me the signature dishes of the restaurant. Hurry up." 2 young masters happened to pass by outside the door. When they heard this, they immediately smiled. "Young Master Liu, you clearly know that you're going to lose, so you're starting to give up on yourself? There's no need to waste the food, right?"